Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to day 2 of the HerStory Online Summit. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And as you can hear, my voice is not doing too well today. I have a very strange sore throat. Fingers crossed it's not COVID. But my first guest is coming to us all the way from the United States. Melissa Ruby, welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, my name is Melissa Ruby, and my artistic name is Mel Rube. I would like to share my story today. I would like to thank you so much, Gertrude, for the invitation, and I will share my story. We are based in West Palm Beach, Florida, originally Dominican, and descendants from Spain. I would love to share my love and passion for art. I am a visual artist, muralist, and a body paint artist for the fashion industry. And it started since I'm 5. I've been painting since the walls of my mother, and we started doing art classes. I later on in life went into college and studied architecture, which had everything to do with the art and the structure. So what we did was that instead of the structure of the architecture, I wanted to break the pattern of the structure of the square that architecture limits you to. I wanted to expand a little bit and be more free will and freelance. So that's when I came to Florida and I started my career as an artist. I have murals in Wynwood, and I have been struggling with art, struggling with meeting people, um, always nonstop knocking doors to meet the right people to be able to get where I want to go. We have been in times to do collaborations and paid works in all South Florida, in New York City, and in Dominican Republic. We have art from ours, and it has been a journey, a full journey since 2018, which we had our first exhibit in Dominican Republic and in New York City. We had natural situations that go on through the world based on acrylic paint on wood, and skin art started, let's say 2018-19. And it was a client that asked to paint a painting that I did in her wall to have it in her back. So that's how my story with the body paint started. I started to fall in love with the vegan products, which are hypoallergenic, and I started to work with them based on my allergies as well. It allowed me to know and get to know more about the different type of materials that they use to create the paints. And I wanted to study and get to know more about it. So I want everyone to know that when you have a dream, strive, work hard, do not let go of it. And wake up every day and work for it very hard, because the right door will open. And I've had many doors been closed and many doors been open, and the ones that are open remain open. And I still have many more to knock and many more to be opened. My website is bymelrube.com. In all platforms of social media and social network, you'll be able to find me as by Mel Rube. It is an honor for me to be part of today's meet with you guys and be able to extend my journey with you guys. Um, I have been doing the visual arts for a while, and it's lovely to get to know the variety of colors. My specialty is spirals, and portraits that are pop art version, and I love to incorporate it with everything that I do. So basically, I could say that that is my story. And I'm glad to be part of what today's journey is. So, based on that, I could share a little story too with you guys. Back in 2018, when I arrived to Florida, I had one of my clients tell me that I was able to participate in my body painting in a fashion show. So when I did this fashion show, I brought my body painting and I painted 5 models. These 5 models also had incorporated pieces of the fashion designers. And that's how I was able to incorporate my body painting in the fashion industry. And instead of making it look, sometimes people have the misinterpretation and misconcept of seeing body painting as something as nudist, and it's not. I want to give a more glam version to it and make it look more elegant. It is body painting at the end of the day, but I incorporate it with the fabrics that these designers use. And it looks amazing because it makes it look as if a costume or a fantasy piece. So including the paint with it and including the fabrics and the pieces of the designers, it makes it look like a fashion piece. So a lot of people, once the ladies come out, or men that are body painted with the pieces, they come out and they stay astonished because it is a statement piece. Once they come out, you'll see, and it's like with headpieces and everything, and it looks marvelous. And I've been able to do camouflage, come out in music videos that are the body painting or mural or wall art painting, you name it. And we just incorporated what has to do with paint. And for me, it has helped not to sleep on my dreams because of my passion being so strong. I wake up every day thinking, what am I going to do today to add to my portfolio? How could I make my job better today? And where can I get a door open that would further my progress? I am very inspired by other artists that are working hard to get out there. And I got I would say inspired by them to create a project in a company that's called Arcal Expo, which 2 to 3 times a year I create an event to have them able to participate and showcase their art. So once they do this, they're able to showcase their art for free, where I get no gratification in money of it. But the benefit that I get is to be able to open a door for them based on sponsors, based on people that would donate and help with the project, and it goes further. So it opens door for people, and the people that I know I could introduce to them, and it expands the network. So I believe in that if I receive something today, to be open enough to share it with the world of art and share it with the other artists so they could be able also to have more doors open in life and expand further. So based on that is how I met Gertrude and how we connected based on the networking and the connections related with also public relations. And there's many topics that we could share and be able to give knowledge to you guys. Make a statement piece, share it with people. There's also tips that I could give you guys. Make sure that your social media is presentable because we make a lot of mistake in social media and the presentations of how we present our paintings, of how we're presenting our work. In my case, is my body art incorporated with the wall art and with the murals, and how can I present it in a way that my clients would like to buy from it, or any person that would see my art gets the attraction of wanting to buy it. So it's based a lot in presentation, how we speak and how we direct to the clients, and how we network with them. It's also the impressions that count. If they don't know you in person, let your paint talk for you. Let your paint tell a story. So I love having a story behind my paintings and being able to say it without being able to talk. Having
That
them
is,
expand.
you're cutting out a little bit there. Um, I'm not sure what's happening with your connection, Mel.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You can continue. Sorry.
Okay.
Just wanted to
Um,
make you aware.
no, it's okay. And thank you. It's based on having the right presentation. So basically, when the presentation takes place in the way that the viewers are ready to buy, and it's telling the story without you being able to, you even have to talk or say anything relating to the story, the person is going to connect in a way with the painter, with the artist, in a way that it's indescriptible. I would say, sorry if I'm not using the correct word, but it's connecting in a way very personal. I use personal stories in my art. Every art that I have has something to do with my journey in life. I always paint one of a kind piece, and I do not like to repeat my pieces, because I believe that I only lived that story once, and it was not repeated the same way. Every day is a different day in life, and it's a different journey. So we present it in a way that you guys could see and feel what happened that day. I also have like one of my pieces that is a day that I was in New York City, and I remembered of what was going on. Like there was like a strike that was going on in the park, in Central Park, and they were talking about what happened in 9/11. And that day I was writing in my diary, and that was in 2017. And now for my last exhibit, I painted the painting that I had did in a sketchbook in 2017, which I always have these drawings that I keep on doing every other day, and I store them, and I go keeping a diary of images of what I go through. Sometimes for me it's better to draw an image than to talk to people of what I'm going through. And I love to talk. And I could last days talking with people and telling them my stories or advices and stuff. But my very personal stories, for me, sometimes it's hard to share it with people, because those are the ones that I reserve for myself. And for me to take them out instead of crying, or instead of getting mad, or instead of many other things, I like to draw them. So sometimes if I feel trapped, you'll see it in my drawing. If I feel very happy, very excited, or mad or frustrated because of any XYZ situation, it should reflect in my drawing, because that is my signature that I am creating to do natural stories based through the picture that I paint. That would be the best way to connect in my way. Now, every person needs to connect knowing their product, how to sell it, how to present it. And I was mentioning the social media, because social media nowadays is a big connection, a big tool that we use. If my medium is Instagram or my website, I need to make sure, very big time, I need to make sure that it connects with my viewers. If It's going to connect in a way that they could share my work, that they could like my stories, that they comment, and every share goes to a new person. So when it goes to a new person, that person has the minimum connection, let's say 30 seconds, or let's go even shorter, let's go 5 seconds of seeing a picture. Did it create an impact in you? So if it created an impact, you're going to share, you're going to like, or you're going to comment, or maybe you won't do none of three and you would just see it. But if you really liked it, you're going to interact at one point, or you're going to send a message in private to the person. So sometimes if somebody does a like in Instagram, Facebook, or any other social media platform that we use, we could follow up with messages to our clients. And it also helps us a lot to connect with our viewers, with our people that are purchasing or seeing and creating a connection. So I think it's great. I love more what Gertrude is doing and what her story circle is sharing with you guys. It's amazing to be able to know and get to know and connect more with other artists, other women that are sharing their story and being able to share a little bit more so we could get more knowledge inside of us and more stories could relate with people and we could resemble and we could sometimes connect with people that we didn't know that we're going through that, or sometimes people think that we are the only one going through something, and believe it or not, there's 100 people more going through the same thing that you're going through. So thank you for inviting me for the space, thank you for making me a part of it, and thank you for hearing my story today. Gertrude, I can't hear you.
Thank you. That is absolutely wonderful, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with our community. A
Thank
lot of creative people suffer because they don't know how to get their work out there. They don't know how to be creative using social media. If there is an artist who is stuck, has got a fantastic product, just doesn't know where to start, give us 3 steps they can follow to get started with using social media more effectively.
Well, that's actually a great um, tip. Let's say 3 ways would be pictures. Pictures to have a connection. Let's say if you're not really good with pictures, ask somebody that you see that takes good pictures. If you're not able to pay a good photographer, get a phone that it takes a digital picture and take a good picture of your art. That's the first thing. You always need to have a clean image. Try to have the best quality, which is high quality. So the picture could show what your art looks in person. Second tip, I would say, which would be the first, but create your account in social medias and start adding people that are related to your theme, to your field. Mine is art, but visual arts, body painting, fashion industry, and murals. So what I do is that I add interior designers, I add people that like fashion, I add a lot of people that I could start expanding my network. So we add friends. These friends share, so we send messages of the postings that we do. Then the third one of when you already have your community in your circle, in your social media, and you have your clean images, start posting. The best thing of start posting is, or the best tip that I could give is never leave the captions in blank. Always make those captions clean, short, and sweet. As if right now I am presenting this pillow. This pillow should have a description that causes or catches anybody's attention in a way that when I put the description of the pillow, the image looks nice, the background looks nice. And it doesn't mean that you have to invest and make every back beautiful. No, no, no. Sometimes there's
Now we can't hear you. You were okay a few minutes ago?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. That sometimes there's an app that would allow to cut the backgrounds, and for nowadays it's so beautiful how everything has been evolving. There's apps for everything that has to do with editing pictures, with sharing them in Instagram, Facebook, and anything that is related to the social media platforms. We have Twitter, we have um, Discord. There's a lot of things right now, and if you go into the digital version, it's even bigger. But let's keep it short and sweet because I know that we have more people coming in. So I would say those three tips: take major quality picture. Post those pictures and have a description that is short and sweet and a good summary of what you are presenting. Once you have that, people would start sharing. And do not expect that the first one is going to go viral and the first one is going to be purchased. No, you have to have patience, but always keep your content clean and with good descriptions that connect with their viewers. Always make sure to answer your messages because that's where people start engaging more with you. If they comment on a picture, start answering that. It's very important because once you engage and you keep on having those sweet conversations, professional conversations, and fast answers, people like that customer service. And everything has to do with customer service nowadays because you have to engage with your client. You have to build a clientele. And then that clientele is going to want to purchase your work. But if you don't engage and if you don't post good quality pictures, it's not going to show exactly what you do. Sometimes that's the major failures of sometimes social media displays of artwork because it doesn't show what you really do. And let's say some artists are magnificent and they have amazing work and they're not able to show exactly because their picture doesn't make a good quality of how the work looks like in real person.
Thank you so much, Melissa. You have such a wealth of knowledge in what you're doing. Can other artists contact you?
Yes, of course. I'll be glad to give more tips and to share more information so people can make better content, and anything that I can do to help people I will be able to do.
Do me a favor and put your website link in the chat so I can share it with the video.
Of course.
Ruth, it's wonderful to have you online. I'm glad you made it. Technology has been playing up today
I am seeing that. It's not in my favor, I would say.
for all of us. Ruth, it's good to see you. Say hi.
I did share it there with you.
Okay, excellent. All right, so this is Melissa's website. If anybody out there is an artist and you are struggling with getting your work out in a big way and you want some expert advice, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I believe everything that we want is already there. So go onto her website, contact her. She's an amazing artist and entrepreneur, which is a very strange combination because most artists are broke. They don't know how to sell their work, they don't know how to use social media, and you definitely fill that gap for them. So thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story today.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the invitation. Love.
Wonderful to see you again. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. Okay, so we will move on to our next speaker. Miss Ruth, would you like to introduce the next speaker? Are you there, Ruth? I think my co host is stuck. So I will have to pull this up. My apologies, hasn't been the best of days with technology playing up. So I will go on and play the video of our next guest. And she is coming from the United States. Joy Lavady is her name. Joy, thank you so much for contributing your video to today's lineup. We're really looking forward to hearing your wisdom. Can you hear me?
My name is Joy Laverde. I am based in Chicago, Illinois, United States, and I am 70 years.
Lynn, are you there?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here. You can imagine we're in Africa and Zesa just went off just like that. So I've tried to engage with that.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you the stage. Introduce yourself. Tell us your message, your vision. Let's see if we can get your message out to the world.
Okay. All right. My name is Lynn Ndlovu, and I'm taking care of children living with hydrocephalus here in Zimbabwe, in Bulawayo. Harare being the capital. Yes, I am running a project that takes care of these children that live with hydrocephalus. And hydrocephalus being excess fluids so these children excess fluid in the brains, their veins, they become swollen, causing the head itself to become. Yes.
Lynn, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Turn off your video so we have you on voice.
Okay.
You will get a better quality sound, okay? So start from the beginning because you keep breaking up, but turn off your video. Lynn? I think we've lost Lynn again. Technology is failing us today, especially for our guests who are coming in from Africa. My apologies for
Thank you.
For that. So, okay, so go ahead, Lynn. Lynn, if you can hear me, you can talk, we can hear you. Lynn? Okay. We are technologically challenged today. We'll just give Lynn a few more minutes and see if she can reconnect. Her project is very, very special. Children with this condition are born with fluid in their heads that causes the head to look much bigger. It puts a lot of pressure on the brain. And there are a lot of complications with these kids and not enough facilities in Zimbabwe to cater for special needs children. Ruth, are you there? Is your connection working, Ruth? We are not having a good day today. Ruth. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we will play the previous video and hopefully These ladies will connect.
And here's my story. My name is Joy Laverde. I am based in Chicago, Illinois, United States, and I am 70 years old. And here's my story. So I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and I'm sitting there minding my own business as a freshman, brand new. And Sister Dorothy marches in the room and she says, "Who's going to go to the nursing home with me on Thanksgiving morning?" Oh, I raised my hand. You see, what I was looking for was a little extra credit. But what I got on that Thanksgiving morning was what I would be doing for the rest of my life. So Sister Dorothy and I went to visit the nursing home, and when we walked in, there were 7 people sitting in the dark. It's Thanksgiving morning. I cannot understand this. I'm 14 years old. I don't know why these people are alone. Where is their family? Why are they not talking to each other? Why do they look so sad? And I made a fundamental agreement with myself that something must be done to make sure that no one is alone in their old age. Years went by, and I continued my tradition, my personal tradition of going to nursing homes, especially on Thanksgiving morning. But that was not enough for me. What I decided to do was create a way for people to begin the process of talking to each other. And so my first book came out called The Complete Elder Care Planner. The mission of this book is to get people to talk to each other so that they're never alone in old age. But 10 years ago, something very interesting happened. I have been on the road for 30 years with the first book, when little by little people came up to me and would say, "I am doing this for my parents. I am taking care of my parents, but who will take care of me when I'm old?" And then I knew right away that that would be my second book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? So now we've come full circle. We are taking care of the family caregivers. We are taking care of people who are aging solo. We are taking care of each other. And I am an advocate for people everywhere as they age. And that's my story.
Wow, Joy, what an amazing vocation you picked.
God picked it, Gertrude. I did not pick it. I fell in love with those people when I went to the nursing home as a 14-year-old, and I have never looked back.
I mean, you were so young, but to sense the sadness and the loneliness is really the driving force that got you to do what you're doing, correct?
Yes, because there was a contrast in what I knew as a young person. So I was going on Thanksgiving morning, I was going home to a house full of people. I am Italian. So we have music and food and dogs and babies and all kinds of activity, lots of noise, a very noisy Italian house. And so me walking into this situation where no music and no one's talking, no one is happy, that was not okay with me, even at the age of 14 years old.
Wow. Wow. I remember my first experience when I moved to the UK. I was 19 and I lived in the street, and an elderly woman died 2 houses away from my apartment. And they only found out she was dead because the milkman kept leaving the milk bottles outside her door, and they accumulated over 2 weeks. And I remember at the time thinking, nobody should die alone. So I'm from Africa, very much like the family you've just described. A house is always full of people, full of family, friends, relatives, and the elderly especially are revered. You never die alone. You are surrounded by people. And even if you don't have children of your own, the community take care of you. So that was my first big culture shock, coming out of Africa, living in London, and just seeing the loneliness that was there. So you obviously took this on. Like you said, you were chosen to do this work. If you were to go back to that younger you and have a conversation with that little girl, based on what life has taught you, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you share with her? Just in case there's a young person trying to decide what to do with their career.
I would say, don't second guess what you know is true. Even if people around you are perhaps questioning your line of thinking. So number one, if you love something, don't worry if others don't get it. The other thing, another nugget of wisdom, if you want to call it that, is it takes a long time for it to define itself, whatever it is. So you may know you love something very much, but you may not know how it will manifest in your life. It may become a job or it may not become a job, but nobody will ever be able to take away whatever it is you're feeling is important at your young age. So just hang on to that. And thirdly, and this is true for me as my age now, but as a 14-year-old, I don't know how I knew to do this, but I knew to ask for help immediately. I did not take this journey alone. I was constantly in the presence of old people, and I would ask them a zillion questions. I was in the presence of professionals and experts, and I never hesitated to ask them, what do you think about this? What would you do if you were me? And so that is my third thing, is surround yourself with people of all kinds, of all ages, and ask them questions to help you get where you want to go.
Wow, they actually say that curiosity, or people who ask questions, are very intelligent. They're not scared to show their ignorance. They want to know more. They're like sponges. They take in information. So it's actually a good thing to ask questions if you're not sure of anything. Now, yes, you wrote this incredible book, and a lot of people don't really plan for that later part of their lives. We know it's coming. It's like death, but we want to keep it as far away from us as possible.
So let me jump right in here. When we say the word care, okay, here's the good thing. Here's the good news. As we grow older, it is not a given that we will need care. It's not a given that we will be sick. It is a given that we will be a living, breathing human being that will have other needs. So we will have physical needs, maybe, but it's not a given. We will have intellectual needs and emotional needs and social needs and spiritual needs. So if we're lucky enough to go toward old age without really being sick, and by the way, that's the way my mother was. She died in her sleep at 92, hardly sick ever in her life. So she's my role model. But what she had and what we all need to strive for is everything else. People around us, socializing, a spiritual life, whatever you want to call spirituality. And then the intellectual curiosity, as you called it. So we can nurture those. And my book is about all four aspects, not just care like being sick, because that's not a given.
I love that. I absolutely love it. So that curiosity should transcend into your old age as well. It's not just you as a child. You have to keep your brain stimulated, motivated, new information going in at all times. I absolutely love it. One of the things that I took up when I turned 50 was tango, because I heard that when you dance, it does help rewire the neurons in your brain. So every Wednesday, my husband and I, we go and dance, and it's really become quite a fun thing to do. You shouldn't just give up on life just because you've reached a certain age.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point, because we have to think about where we want to live. You mentioned you have a husband, but so many people are aging alone. And so it's important to say, how is it that I could stay connected? So I always caution people when they say, I want to stay in my home for as long as possible, because if it gets to the point where nobody comes to visit, you will be isolated, and that's not a good thing.
That is so true. That isolation is something that you actually want to avoid. So, is there a step-by-step process that one should think about when they start nearing retirement? I'm going to share the banner with your website in case there's somebody out there who's planning retirement, has an elderly parent, they can be able to get hold of you. So give us that step-by-step process.
Okay, I'll give you the top 3 things to plan for, because there's so one of the reasons, Gertrude, that people do not plan is because it's overwhelming. So I'm going to narrow it down to the top 3. The first one is money. How are we going to finance a longer life? Now, I always like to tell people that we need to finance our quality of life. What is it going to take to have what we want for as long as we want it? So number 1 is get your money house in order. Now, if you're a caregiver and you don't know about your parents' financial well-being, you're going to have to figure out a way to get them to trust you to say, okay, mom and dad, how are we going to do this? How do you plan to pay for your old age? So if you don't have much of a relationship with your parents, don't expect them to start talking to you about their money, because that's the last thing they're going to do. So you have to think about that first. And my book has a lot of tips on communicating. So number 1, financing a longer life. Number 2 is what I already mentioned, housing. Where do you want to live? Now, when we think about that, we really do need to think about living in a community setting. Even if we live in our own homes, we can think about living as in a village or a tribal situation, something where people are checking in with each other and we're getting together socially. And of course, being the Italian that I am, we have to have dinner together, right? So the first is money, the second is housing, and the third very important tip for planning for a longer life is getting your paperwork in order. And by that, I mean making sure that you have the legal documents, you're prepared to give someone power of attorney, and you in turn are the power of attorney for someone else, which means we give each other, people we trust, the decision-making power should we become incapacitated. Now, none of this stays in place once we die. So that's not the planning. The planning is what happens if we don't die? What happens if we are incapacitated? We can't speak what we want. We have to have people around us that we have given permission to say, help me make decisions, do it in my behalf. But of course, these legal documents have to be integrated far before we need them, and while we have the mental capacity to do it with someone we trust. Very, very important. So there you go. Money, housing, and legal documents. Now, how easy is that? Right?
It sounds simple. It sounds simple.
It is.
It that way.
Well, that's my job. I don't want people, most of the time, people don't do it because they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah. And
That's all.
it is easy to go into overwhelm because there is a lot of things there that need to be taken into consideration. But what you're saying is when you can still have the capacity to make the choices, this is the time to do it, correct?
Yes. I always advise people to get to work with the professionals. So a financial planner or an attorney. Very important. Don't go it alone. And there, in at least in the United States, and I'm sure all over the world, there are places you could go to get free legal advice, free financial advice. People will be willing to help you with this, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. You just need to know. Ask around. Boy, I'm like the one that asks everybody, how did you do what you did? Who helped you? How did you find this wonderful resource? Was it expensive? Do you know another way to do it? I mean, it's just, people are such a wonderful resource, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
That is so true.
I
Wow.
learned so much from everybody. And, I don't know, have you ever heard of the concept of critical thinking?
Yes.
I love critical thinking, and what that means for anybody who may not know. And I didn't know about it either until I wrote my second book. Critical thinking is getting out of the box and not being afraid to ask questions. But what I mean by getting out of the box is start talking to people who are nothing like you. Talk to people who are really old, talk to people who are really young, talk to different cultures, find out, ask questions. Here's my situation. What would you do if you were me? And one of my most trusted advisors is my 7-year-old granddaughter. She helps me out a lot, and she's so honest, and so critical thinking is a really good way to plan for the future, because you're going to get all kinds of ideas and all kinds of wonderful advice.
I love it. So let's end our interview with this question. If time was an illusion and your past, your present, your future could exist in the same timeline, and I could take you forward to the future you're now 120, with science being what it is, you'll probably live that long if your grandmother lived to 92. If you could have a conversation with that woman based on how you've lived your life, what would you say to her?
Didn't you have a great time? Didn't you just do it all? I'm so proud of you. You never held back. You were always brave. And for that, I thank you, because you loved so hard. You played so hard. You worked so hard. And so sleep, baby, sleep.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful to be able to come to the end of your life and thank yourself for having lived a full life. I can feel that you will exit this earth with no juices left at all.
No, I sure won't. I just say yes to everything, and I just advise everyone, this is the only life we've got. Just love so hard. Just love.
We have one life. Thank you so much, Joy. This has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to
Thank you.
meet you and to share you with our community. Lots of food for thought, everybody. You have the time and the choice to decide what the end days will look like. So plan it. So Joy, you have a second book that
Yes.
helps people plan for their elder years, correct?
Yes. So, yes. Who will take care of me when I'm old? And remember, care is all about everything, not just physical.
Fantastic. Have a fantastic day, everybody, or evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, take care and bye for now. Thank you, Joy, for this interview.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Miss Terry. Hey, Ruth. I don't know if Ruth can hear us.
I can hear you.
How
Can
is
you
everyone?
hear me?
Terry, you are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ruth, at last.
Yes.
Technology is not working
Hi,
today.
Terry.
Hi, how are you?
No,
She's
Great.
not good. She's having power issues
I'm
in
well, and
Zimbabwe.
you?
Oh my.
It's lovely to see you both. Thank you for coming online.
Okay.
So, Miss Terry, did you see the email I sent?
Thank you.
I just got it. I sent you a thumbs up. I just received
Okay. My worry is that Ruth will drop off.
it.
So if you would like to look at the program, I think our next speaker is Marika, I think. Who do we have next on the schedule?
You mean
Marika.
Yes.
All
Lexmon.
right. If you'd like to read that bio.
Yes, I will do that. So Marika Lexmond reads tarot cards, loves food, photography, and travel. She has 3 sassy little dog account at Ebron to travel from an age to buy books to her master's degree from the Dutch Film Academy. Fantasy and science fiction are her favorite genres. She prefers to write fun and mystical stories. Her attraction to nature and places with a magical history brought her to New Orleans and the west coast of Ireland. As a pagan, she felt an instant connection to the land. It feeds her imagination and has become the inspiration for the Madigan Chronicles. The Cup Madigan Chronicles number 4 will be released in the fall of 2022. You can follow the witches on IG and FB at Under the Witch's Hat and Marika on her IG account at Marika Lex. So we will have a video. Is it ready?
Hello, Gertrude. Thank you for having me on the show. My name is Marieke Lexmond, and I'm originally from the Netherlands. I live in part of the year in New Orleans and part of the year here on the west coast of Ireland. I see myself as a world citizen because I'm all over the place, and I feel very lucky to be able to live in 2 places. I started going to film school in the Netherlands and have a degree actually in camera and lighting and worked there in the film industry for many years. And at a certain point, my husband got a job opportunity in America and we thought, what the heck, let's just go into the world. He had a job, but I didn't have a work permit at that time. So I came to a different country, sat there and learned that I had to reinvent my life. I went from full-time working, always busy, teaching horse riding lessons to absolutely nothing. And it was a bit of a culture shock because I thought, well, I'm from the Netherlands, it's more or less the same than America. But it turned out that there was still a lot of cultural difference. And going from full-time working to absolutely nothing was really a shock to the system. So I had to think and I started writing because it turned out I had a lot of stories twirling around there in my head. And yeah, I started reading tarot cards. I've always been interested in tarot cards and the art and the thought behind it. And these two things started to come together into a story. And that's how I started to do the Medican Chronicles. And it's a 6-book series that I'm not sure why I started, because, it seems very daunting, and I'm not particularly a patient person. And in the beginning I thought, gosh, writing a book, you probably need a lot of patience. I started with screenplays, and one of my ideas about the witches, people encouraged me to start writing. And one day I found myself here in Ireland on the West Coast and thought, what the heck, I'll just start. And I absolutely love it. I love writing. I love going in, I love going into the heads of all these people and just explore. And it's totally different from where I started. And it's giving me just so much joy to explore that. And I'm just lucky to be able to do it. It's just... writing is something that I never thought I would do. And so you never know how your path in life is going. I always think that's one of the hardest things, is to trust on the path that you're on. I started in the film industry. I worked on the sets. I did lots of stuff. I ended up, before I was 30, running a camera rental house and really was into the business side of things. And I lost track of why I went to film school and being creative and why that was important to me. But I was good at the business stuff, and for a time I enjoyed it. But after several years, I really became very unhappy and slept very badly. And so when we went to America, I thought, I really need to change what is important to me. And as a young person, I felt much more certain is what I wanted to become. I went to film school because I wanted to be a filmmaker, and something that I still do and still love doing. But it's becoming older. I found it's more difficult. What did I really want and what is important to me? And living in a different country instilled for me to really think about who am I? And that really set me in the end on the path of writing.
I was saying, you and I share a very similar path. I went back to film school when I was 37.
Oh, wow. Yes.
When I moved to New Zealand, Peter Jackson was filming Lord of the Rings. And it was such an inspiration, being a storyteller from Africa, watching digital storytelling in action in my backyard. And you're right about creativity and the different expressions of creativity. Let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of people who are in business don't see themselves as being creative, or they're fearful of even exploring that. So where does one start?
Well, I think creativity is not always so obvious. People think, oh, creative is like painting or like filmmaking, and even filmmaking, you have different levels of creativity, because, you can be a cameraman, which is part creative and part very technical. But I think if you're in business, creativity can be in small things like cooking. I love to cook things. And if you take a recipe, you start to learn what things fit together, and then you can start experimenting and make it your own. And that's a creative process in itself. And that can give you, I think, extra joy to these little things, and give you more freedom in thinking outside the box, because people are very used to thinking in certain patterns. And I think if you are creative, it helps you to snap out of things. Like, I write, but I get stuck. I think, where does my story go? How do I do it? And then I start to do little things like I start to make pictures that relate to my story, or I live a magical life, so I make spells that I sell on my website. And if I make the spells, it also puts me in the witch's world. So I start to use that part of my brain and I start to live in that world. And I think if you do a very business-like thing, to find something that is even close to home and do little things like light a candle or go outside, take a picture, can help you really snap out of that normal train of thought.
Now, it must have taken a lot of courage for you to leave your successful camera rental business and go into the writing. What was the turning point? What made you make that decision?
Well, I'm married, and my husband got a job opportunity, and I got very tense from doing business. And I also felt that that the business became repetitive. The film industry in the Netherlands is very small, so I knew everybody. I knew what people were going to say. It was just like, I felt, where can I go from here? I just felt stuck. So when my husband got the opportunity to work somewhere else, I just saw a way out, and I didn't really think about it properly. I think like I want to go and do something else, but it really forced me to reevaluate myself. And by moving to America, I really learned a lot about myself. By living in another country, I think it's a gift because you learn a lot about your own culture. I never thought about what it meant to be Dutch, but I turned out to be a pretty Dutch person. And and you really need to think about yourself. And then I started, why did I go to film school? I went to film school because I wanted to do something creative. Yes. And so that set me on a different path. And it still took me many years to get there. But thinking back, I think, gosh, I was on a path, I had to walk it. Yeah. But being not the most patient person, I would sometimes think, oh, come on, can we hurry up to the next step?
Now, it sounds to me like being pushed out of your comfort zone was another good thing. Moving to the new country, it really pushed you to stretch yourselves beyond where you would have been if you had stayed back at home, correct?
Absolutely. I think it's extremely uncomfortable, but a very good thing to have happened. And I also am lucky that my partner is anyway somebody who pushes you out of your comfort zone constantly. So it's something that I think really helped me grow a lot. And being in your comfort zone is just natural, and it's great. But I think by going out of your comfort zone, you grow and you learn new things. And you also learn that, I learned anyway, by that I don't know anything. And there's so much out in the world, and you can learn so many new things, and it's so exciting. I think by learning that you don't know anything, it's just great because it opens a whole new world for you.
It does. It certainly does. So tell us a little bit about the spells and the magic. Not many people go there. Not many people allow themselves to explore magic and spells and the mystery that is in this life. How did you come about to learn about this and use it in your own life?
When I went to film school, I wandered into the red light district. There was a very cute little store called Himalaya, and I picked up my first book about witchcraft and tarot cards. And I was really drawn to a natural way of living and connecting to the cycles of nature. And these days, I think that got lost a lot. And I think by living in the flow of the moon and the circles of the seasons, it makes a lot of sense to me anyway. And that's why I love living in places with high energy. Like here on the west coast of Ireland, I feel connected to the land. But in New Orleans, I feel connected to the life that runs through that city. And by connecting to nature and to the flows of energy, I feel that it enriches your life and makes you more conscious of what's happening around you, or little things, or it's a conscious way of doing things. And with the spells, it's like you just simply set an intention, and by being a mindful intention, you put things into the world and it starts to take on a life on its own. So when I make a spell, I look for little things all the time. So when I walk on the beach, or if I'm in a little shop, and I pick up constantly little things that fit in there. And then I sit down and I think, just to give you the most mundane example, a love spell, I just think about love and the little things that I have around me that think about love, that represents, like, water is about emotion. And so I take a little shell from the beach and put it in there. And so I have a million little tiny things that I put in there. And then I bless it under the full moon. And there you go.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, words are powerful. Most spells, of course, are made up of words. One of the things I've learned is to be very conscious of the words I'm putting out there, because we do create everything with the words that are in our heads, the words that come out of our mouths. And like you said, the intention behind those words causes that ripple effect to make things actually happen. So tell us something a little bit about your stories. I'm curious to know what you write about.
My stories is about witches, but I think deep down it's just about family. I'm fascinated with family, and my story is about 3 generations of witches that has to fight some form of evil, but they're basically busy with their relationships and the relationships out of the world, finding out who are they, learning to be yourself. And I love that it communicates between the generations, because I feel, especially in our Western society here in Europe and America, that sometimes the natural connection between generations is a little bit lost. And I think there's great value to combine old and young. And so I play around with that, but I also play around, I come from a real family, but I'm also really aware that there are people out there who don't feel like they fit at all in their family. So it's an endless thing you can explore. You can go endlessly into family connections. I've always been watching dynamics in families, and I use that now in my stories.
Oh, I love that. So if there was somebody here who is thinking about going into the writing world or exploring their own creativity, based on how you've discovered your flow, what 3 nuggets of advice or wisdom could you share with them on how they can get started?
The most important thing is just get started. Don't care too much about if it's good or not. Just start doing things. Another thing is you can start doing courses. I did a lot of writing courses about different ways, about dialogue, but also about story. And but just take what works for you. I find, and that's clearly, if you teach people something, you have to believe in what you teach, but not everything works for everybody. So you take from all the things that you learned and make it your own. Make your own thing out of it, and don't be afraid to say, this works and this doesn't work for me. Don't get stuck in it till this is the way. There's not just one way. There's a million ways, and you have to find your way. And last, I think, is just don't do one thing. Just explore different things, because you never know. I never thought I would become a writer. And if you would have said that to me when I was 20, I would have said, you're insane. I have no patience. If you get an email from me, it's just 2 sentences. But now I just write whole books. You just never know. Just try stuff out.
I love it. And you talk a lot about passion. I believe that your Life purpose is in the things you're passionate about, the things that come easy with no effort. And it is a matter of exploration that you will discover your passion, really, correct?
Yes, I mean, like you in your life, you did so many things. And I think if you don't step out of your comfort zone, what we talked about earlier, and you don't try out new stuff, then you just you get sort of stuck. And if it makes you happy, it's fine. But I think trying out new things, a whole new world opens, and I wish that for everybody. And it doesn't need to be big trips to different countries, or it can be going for a picnic in your park and see that owl, or you just don't know where it is, but you don't know until you step out and start doing things.
Yeah, the inspiration is all around us if we really are present and we pay attention. That is so true. So are you helping other people to discover these gifts? How can people find you?
I love to talk about it, and you can find about the world of the witches on my website under the witch's hat. There's more information about the books, but also there are recipes, because one of my witches in the books cooks a lot, so I use that to put some of my recipes out there, and there are cocktails on there. You can find the spells there, because then you can see it's a whole world that for me creates in the end these books and the stories. And one of the things I also do is in my books, each chapter starts with a tarot card, and they're designed by my friend and wonderful artist Nicole Ruigrok, and it's just a joy to work with another person that's creative, because even that pushes you in sometimes to do better. It's always, you talk about it, and it really helps things grow. So if you ever have a chance to work with somebody that's also creative, I would recommend that, because that's also a gift. So, and you can find HerStory on the website as well, and it's just
that is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, I'm excited to have met you, and I'm so glad you ticked yes to know more information about the reality TV show that I'm working on for the HerStory movement. So I will say my goodbyes to everyone. Thank you so much for this interview, but don't go away.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for having me. I loved it.
It's an absolute pleasure. So all of you out there who are seeking your creative selves, do something different. They say everything you want is on the other side of fear. If it scares you, that's where you need to go. Explore, pick up a paintbrush, get some clay and become a sculptor, or start playing the guitar or the piano. Do something creative, explore who you truly are. Refuse to choose to be one thing. That's how I've lived my life, and it's been absolutely amazing.
I totally agree.
So I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you again for this interview.
Thank you.
That was an amazing woman. Very, very creative in how she has reinvented herself. She reminds me a lot of you and your many careers. How are you this morning, Terry?
Oh, I'm doing great. Doing great.
That is awesome. We had a few technical issues in the beginning. I'm not sure which way you came in. Did you come in as a guest or through the main account?
I came in through the main account. I figured it out.
Okay, good. Because my worry is if my connection drops, which I suspect it might.
Oh, wow.
So if you came in through the main account, this broadcast will continue. So that's awesome. So you want to read the bio for the next speaker and I'll line up the video? Who do we have next?
Okay, I have Monica.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Monica's mission is not only to help free women spiritually, but also to unleash the power that is in each of them, to set a course for new experience and new roles that women may have never seen themselves in, to challenge them in new ways that bring out the adventurous side and set them on the path to wholeness and joy. Monica also has her own podcast, Whole Heart. It's hosted bi-weekly, and I'm sure she will talk about that. And it is positioned on TMB, which is the Christian Broadcasting Company. She also has a radio talk show, In the Heart of It All. Both features interviews with local luminaries, guest vocalists, worshipers, and other community leaders. I present to you Monica Goudre. Not sure, but it's close to
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Monica Goudre. I am 43 years old, based out of the United States of America, in Columbus, Ohio specifically. And this is my story. So as you know, I'm 43 years old. I have 3 children, and I've been married for 21 years. The children that I have, I was told that I would never be able to have because for the longest time as a child, when I started puberty and had menstrual cycles, I would bleed for an extended amount of time and no one really knew why. But it landed me in the hospital a few times, and I ended up having to have multiple blood transfusions and iron transfusions and different things like that. But no one really figured out what was going on. I was just told that I would never be able to have children. And growing up, when you're a teen, you don't really think about things like that. You just kind of are, you cross that bridge, I guess, when you get there. But I ended up getting married and to the love of my life. And I ended up still having those issues. And because I'm a woman of faith, I believed, even though doctors told me that I would never have children, that I would. So we decided to start infertility treatments because the traditional way wasn't working when we got married. And to no avail. Nothing was happening. Nothing was working. We tried several rounds of a specific drug that would help with infertility, but it just didn't work. And meanwhile, as I'm trying to get pregnant, my husband, who had a son from a previous relationship, came to move with us. So I'm 21 years old, raising an 8-year-old, and doing my best as a parent, not having any problems as a step parent. Nothing like that ever happened. But in the midst of that, raising him, trying to conceive my own children. Finally, my hematologist, when I was 26 years old, told me, said, "Hey, kiddo, you're doing a lot of bleeding, honey, and you're gonna stroke out. You're gonna have a heart attack. You're gonna die. When are you gonna go ahead and just get a hysterectomy?" And I sat there in the office at 26 years old with a decision to make, and that was, would I, improve the quality of my life and have this hysterectomy, or would I still believe to be able to have children? And I decided, you know what? I believe God, and I'm going to not have this hysterectomy, and I'm going to continue to try. Many years passed, many years. And when I mean many years, almost a decade passed. And I went through multiple infertility treatments, namely artificial insemination. And the first round, I produced multiple eggs, meaning like 10 eggs that were able to be fertilized, but they canceled the round so that I didn't have to decide to keep children or to terminate them. The second time, I had 6 eggs, and we went ahead with that round of infertility treatments, and nothing happened. And I decided to just stop. I gave up everything. I just decided, you know, if this is going to happen for me, it's going to happen, but it's not happening now. I am proud to say that after 8 years of trying, we did conceive our first son, Warren. And then after that, we had multiples, which is actually I have a toddler who came when I was 40 years old, unexpected. I thought my life was, you know, pretty much going I was firing on all cylinders, and I ended up getting pregnant. And then I didn't really know what to do with my life. And it's funny how, you know, you want children, and, you know, you desperately want them, and you have all these plans and ideas of what's going to happen when you have them. And then when you have another one that's, I can call him an overflow of blessing, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This wasn't a part of the plan. This was totally outside of something that I, you know, was expecting. So I had to rewrite my story. I had to rewrite my plans. And I don't know if you're out there and if you're a believer or not, but our plans aren't our plans. You know, God has better plans for us. And so I had to figure out what that was. And I firmly believe that He is the reason why I am the woman that I am today, which is a person that is going through a tremendous amount of healing in regards to overcoming rejection. And that's one of the things that I love to share about with people, and with women specifically, especially mothers and wives and people who lost a sense of themselves by way of those titles. And I'm one of those people that comes boldly to say that, you know, although things on the outside may look put together, there are things on the inside of all of us that people can't see. The hidden torments, the hidden things that, you know, that keep us up at night, or that keeps us away from achieving the ultimate goals that we have to just live a life of abundance and joy. And so when I speak about rejection and just overcoming those things, I always say that it's a work in progress. When you're healing, you have your surgery, right? When you need to have a surgery, you have a surgery. And then after surgery, you go through what's called physical therapy. And physical therapy can be just as painful as actually, you know, the surgery itself. And so I'm in physical therapy and going through these different exercises mentally and emotionally to help me overcome these things and these triggers that when they come up, you're like, oh, I still have an area that I need to deal with. Oh, there's something else that needs to be worked out. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a painful thing, but it's a beautiful thing. So that's just another part of my story. You know, when I was asked to do this, I was extremely grateful because it gives me the opportunities to shed light on different aspects of my life. And so not only am I healing and overcoming rejection, and I'm able to share that, I'm also able to share the parts of my life where, yes, I've been married for 21 years and it's been a beautiful journey. But there was a time in my marriage where things were crumbling, where there was a point of my marriage where we were going to go through a divorce. We had divorce papers signed and notarized on my fireplace mantle, and we were going to walk away from each other. And we decided that we were a team and that we were going to stick it out and stay, and not for our children, not for our friends that expected us to stay, but we decided to stay for each other. And that happened. That was like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And here we are 21 years married, and it's a beautiful journey. But what I would love to do with people is to shed light on, though you may be going through the darkest times of your life, that there is light and beauty at the end of the tunnel, and that there is hope, and that there's purpose in your pain, and that no matter what you're walking through, that you can overcome it. I know that it seems like it's bleak and it's dark and that it'll never happen, but my life is an ultimate testimony or an ultimate expression that it is possible, that things are possible, that your dreams are possible. Although you may be older, like myself, and you know, you may have like to pivot a little bit, even in your pivoting, you're in the right step of your direction in your dreams and your goals in life. You know, I have always had an aspiration of speaking and sharing and having a platform to spread hope and to spread love and to spread inspiration. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that on different platforms. I have my own podcast called Whole Heart with Monica C. Guidry, and I get to display stories of women who are just like me, who have overcome and share their tragedy to triumph stories. So I was able to create a platform myself from scratch, from nothing, and now being broadcast to countries, over 30 countries around the world, little old me, without any guidance, without any help or anything like that. And it's exploded to the point where people want to listen to what I have to say. And I believe that people, in all that is happening in this world, they just want to know that they're not alone. So that's my story. That's where I've come from. That's my heart, just a little bit of it, because there's so many other things that have happened in my life that have just developed me into the woman that I am today. But I'm so fortunate and so grateful for the opportunity and the privilege to just share the little bit that my life contains.
Wow, what an incredible story, and just so inspirational. What really strikes me about your story is your level of conviction.
Yeah.
A lot of people trust the experts. We're told a certain diagnosis, we believe it, and before you know it, you have restricted your own future by buying into somebody else's belief system. So what was it that gave you that conviction? There must have been something in you that told you that this diagnosis isn't right. There could be a woman right now who's listening, is confused, has been told she needs a hysterectomy. What was it that made you hold on to that faith?
Well, for me, it's just my relationship that I have with Jesus. It's just the knowing that I know for sure that healing belongs to me, right? It belongs to all of us, actually. Whether you're a believer or not, it belongs to you. So it was just something on the inside of me that just knew without a shadow of a doubt, even though everything else pointed to what the doctors were saying, it was one thing I just knew, like, I'm going to go with what my gut says.
And it's all about trusting your gut, just having that feeling, knowing it's correct, and just defying everything that the so-called professionals tell you, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's just a strong knowing. And it's like, it's one of those things that overcomes you. It's like when you're asking, well, what exactly does that feel like? And it's just like, when you're about to do something that is super scary, but it's like something is like, go for it anyway. It's that same kind of drive that it's like a no matter what, I've got to do this thing. That's the feeling that it feels like.
I love that, because I always find it difficult to explain my intuition. I'm a very intuitive person. And I have done some of the craziest things on the planet. And people say to me, but how did you know? And for me, I get a certain kind of energy around a project or whatever it is I'm doing, and I can't sleep. I'm online until weird times of the day. And I just know I'm on the right track. I just know that the road is in front of me. And I just have to keep taking one step at a time. And then when it's done, you look back like you look at your life now. And people think, how does she do that?
Right.
One day at a time and one step at a time too, right?
That's all it takes. Just one step in the right direction, and it's with anything, right? It's like, people who might deal with anxiety or depression or different things like that. And I don't know why I'm talking about this, but maybe when somebody out there is dealing with it, but it's like one day at a time, maybe today it's, just getting out of bed, right? Give yourself credit for the little that you've done. I don't think we celebrate ourselves enough, the small steps that we do enough. And I think when we do that, it encourages the other step, and then the other step, and then the other step, Yeah.
And one thing that you said that's really pivotal, like I have a policy, and I used to make my kids do this every single day, that no matter how low you're feeling, no matter what's going on in your life, the first chore for the day, and this is what my mother used to do, was to make your bed.
Yes.
So if you're in that low point and you manage to just wake up and make your bed, pat yourself on the shoulder for that.
Yeah.
That's one tick on your to-do list of things to do for the day.
Yeah.
Just make your bed and get out of bed. So I just love this conversation, because these are the conversations that really light me up. I know that there are a lot of people who are struggling with all kinds of issues in their lives. Right now, we're stuck in the middle of a pandemic. There's so much uncertainty for the future.
Yeah.
So let's have a little thought experiment.
Okay, I like that.
And let's imagine that time is an illusion.
Okay.
Past, your present, and your future exist on the same timeline. And I'm going to take you back to that younger you, that young woman who knew she was born to be a mother.
Okay.
If you could have a conversation with her and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom about life, based on what life has taught you, what would you say to her?
3 nuggets. Oh, wow. Don't take yourself so serious. Have fun. Enjoy the smallest things. Celebrate yourself. This is so, I don't know if I could just do 3. There's so many things. And just because you think that a person doesn't like you because they didn't smile or have a good, say hello, it doesn't mean that it has anything to do with you. It could just be that they're going through their own personal storm. You give them your smile.
I love that. I absolutely love it. So now let me teleport you into the future.
Okay.
You're now 120 years old. We know that with science, we're going to live for a very long time, right? And you can sit on your rocking chair surrounded by your children and your great-grandchildren, and you could have a conversation with this wise woman. What would you say to her?
What would I say to this wise woman? Okay, so let me get this straight. So let me make sure that I'm answering this right. Am I the woman that I'm asking questions to?
So you're asking the future you.
Asking the future me questions. Oh boy.
Or you're talking to her. What would you say to her based on how you're living your life right now?
Based on how I'm living my life right now. Wow. I probably wouldn't ask anything. I would probably just do a little bit more listening, just at the feet, and just, whatever it is that's being said, absorbing it, because what I'm finding is I can do a lot of talking and not enough listening. And it's the listening that is the parts where we learn the most. So I don't know if I answered that right or good enough, but I think that's what I would do.
That's a really good answer. So I have a thing. I do believe time doesn't exist. I do believe everything I'm trying to create in my life is already out there, just waiting for me to catch up with it. So when I struggle with certain things, I go into my meditation and my prayers, and I tune into that wise woman who is me. And I ask her for advice. I ask her, what is my next step? What am I supposed to do now? And because she's already there in the future, she guides me along the way.
Wow.
And what happens for me is I sometimes wake up, if there's something I'm trying to figure out and I'm having a conversation with someone, and it's like the people who come into my path on that day have the answers. So I just start telling anybody I meet that this is what I'm working on and I don't know what to do. And then one person will say something, then the next one will say something. And then before I know it, by the end of the day, I have the answer. Or
wow,
the answers percolate through my dreams. So I have the most real dreams. My wisdom comes through my dreams, sometimes through my grandmother. And she shows up and she will say the most cryptic messages that make no sense at 2:00 in the morning. But when I wake up, I know exactly what my next step is supposed to be.
That is incredible. You know what's funny? I had an experience the other night. I was dealing with something, you know, as I alluded to, you know, I'm recovering rejection and abandonment issues and different things like that from just stuff that happened in my childhood. And I've been dealing with every now and again, I'll have to disassociate what's truth and what's a lie, right? What's true, what's a lie. And I can do that my own self. But this particular night, I really felt like that I had an encounter I call Holy Spirit, right? And it was literally like he was sitting on my bed and showing me truths and lies, what were truth. And it was almost like the Matrix. Like the lies were being decoded. It was like it was the most incredible experience that I've ever had in my life. It was like every lie was being decrypted, or I don't know, decoded. And I just started getting all these answers and all these things, these questions that I've had for forever just started being answered. And it was just like I woke up the next day and I totally felt like a new person. I have never had an experience like this in my life. And you're the first person that I've shared this with. I haven't even shared this with my friends yet. So this is exclusive.
I love it. I got an exclusive. Yeah, but it's true, right? Whether we call it God, spirit, our higher self, we are guided.
We do have a guide. That's right. We do have a guide.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell people I've had a spirit-led life because I never bump into the wrong people. Or if I do, it's for a brief moment. I find out very quickly that, okay, this doesn't feel right. And I distance myself from them and I move on to better and bigger things. So this is a very interesting and juicy conversation for me because I sometimes feel I'm a little bit crazy with the stuff that happens to me. But
we all have a little crazy.
Magical. It is magical.
There's a little crazy in us all. I say. You did say something about people that you bump into. You've never bumped into the wrong person. I like to say it like this: even if I ever have, call them our enemies, people that don't necessarily have our best interest in mind. I feel that even they serve a purpose, right? So I'm not so quick like I used to necessarily get them out of my life. I feel that they are necessary for my purpose in life. I need the good and the bad, right? And because it's all growing me and it's all making me into the person that I am becoming. So instead of, trying to do what I need to do to kind of get them out or away from me or whatever, it's kind of like, okay, you're a fixture. You're just you're an accessory right now, and I'm going to use you as an accessory in order for me to get to my expected purpose.
Oh, I love that. I really like that. I had a friend who said to me when I started creating my movement, she said, Gertrude, with every bump in the road, every hurdle, look at it this way. Don't jump over those rocks. Mm-hmm. Turn them over. There is something underneath every hurdle, every rock. There's a gift in everything that is going wrong. So take time to examine what that is. And you're right, they're there for a reason, to make you stronger, to show you your blind spots, whatever it is, there is something good that's going to come out of it.
Yes.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say every day comes with a blessing or a teaching. The good things are your blessings. The bad things are just the lessons.
That's so good. Your grandmother was very wise.
She was a wise woman. She really was. Now, you touched on another subject that I'm very passionate about talking. You almost got divorced and you didn't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I went through a divorce 4 years ago.
Okay.
I was married for 27 years, 31-year marriage, and my life collapsed.
Yeah.
And I often think, could I have done things differently?
Right.
To save my marriage? Tell me what it is that you and your husband did to bring you to 21 years when you almost thought it was over.
When I almost thought it was over. Can you hear me? I don't know. I had to mute it real quick. When I almost thought it was over, when we both almost thought it was over, it was one of those things where I'll never tell somebody that you should not get a divorce or, anything like that. I don't ever want um, to say that to someone because everyone's life and journey is different. But for me, I just felt like we were losing everything. This was a period of our lives, and I didn't share this part, but there were a period of our lives where we just started giving up, and we were losing our house, we were losing our cars, we were losing jobs and different things like that. We were not stable in any area of our lives. And we looked at each other and said, we're either going to sink or swim alone, or we're going to sink or swim together. And that was the decision that we both made. Like, we're going to go through this storm together.
And that saved your marriage.
It really did. Losing everything saved it.
That's just amazing.
Saved it.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been a very interesting interview. My last question is there anything I should have asked you and didn't?
Anything that you should have asked me and didn't? See, I'm a processor, so that's hard. When I get off here, I'm going to probably email you like, we should have talked about.
Or maybe let's just say, what is your parting thoughts?
Oh, man.
Take the pressure off.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, my parting thoughts will be, you're not alone. We're in a pandemic right now, and I just feel like that there are a lot of people out there that are just kind of, just trying to make it through one day at a time. And I just want you to know that you are not alone in this world. And if you feel like that you are, there's one person that you can call and count on. And if you only got that one person, reach out to them, because you need to know that you don't have to go through this life and do life alone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're
for
welcome.
gracing us with your presence today, sharing your nuggets of wisdom. And thank you to everybody who tuned in around the world. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are. And Monica, don't go away. I need to talk to you before you go. Okay. Bye for now, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Okay. Another amazing young woman. Beautiful, beautiful story. I particularly like the fact that her and her husband were able to keep their marriage together and survive a very difficult storm. Not many couples get to figure that out. What was your take, Terry, on this presentation?
At her age, there was persistence on getting pregnant. I gave up trying to get pregnant at a young age because I was career pathing. And then also because I refused to get married. Have babies if the marriage wasn't working. Yeah. So my first two were very short term. So I didn't attempt to get married. But however, when I got the third husband, I immediately started to want to get pregnant because there was just something about our relationship that I knew it was going to work. But at the age of 37, it was kind of too late. But anyway, we both understood that, and we decided it was a lot easier to have someone come into a baby to come into your life after 9 months of pregnancy rather than adopting one. Yes. So we opted not to adopt. And so then we just take care of each other now. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
She was really persistent about getting pregnant, which is good.
Yeah. And she knew that her babies were there, despite what the medical professionals were telling her. She had that faith that she was going to have her babies, and she got more than she bargained for by the sound of it.
Yeah. And that's what we have to do. We have to not always rely on the professionals, because, you know, they only know you from the time that you're in their office, any other relationships, but they don't really know your heart, and they don't really know what it is that you desire. And God will deliver the desires of your heart. If it's to be, it may not be in your timing, but He will deliver it one way or another. And that is what has happened to Monica. Okay, so we are going to take a brief break here, because we are going to move on to our next video. I will do the bio for Charlotte Canyon. She's an actress, award-winning author, and radio host. Charlotte has shared her stories to thousands of listeners. Her passion is giving senior health care is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and she wants to share her knowledge with everyone she can. Knowledge is definitely power. Sharon's first book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying: How to Parent Your Parents, won Best Self-Help Book and International Top Author Award. She has won many awards in her career, including a Presidential Award for serving her community. She has 4 golden rules to live by: love, respect, patience, and forgiveness. Her topics generally cover the importance of caregiver attitude, which is big. That's very important. How to divide up parenting for parents' responsibilities, why adult children and seniors should learn to play together again, dealing with stress, and laughter helps.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Canyon, and I live in Denton, Texas. For those of you that don't know where Denton is, it's in the northern part of Texas. So I live in the United States. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and I am 76 years old, or actually 76 years young. My journey started, of course, when I was young, but I didn't realize the full potential of it until about 20 years ago, when my father-in-law was living with us and he developed dementia. Now, my parents lived about 2 hours away, and within 6 weeks, they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So somehow I was tossed into the deep end of the swimming pool, and I had forgotten how to swim. It was a bit overwhelming, but it's been a journey that I've been on over the past 20 years, and I wouldn't trade a moment of it. My father-in-law was a precious, precious man. He lived with us, and he was the gentleman's gentleman. He would pull out the chairs. He would open the car door. It was like having a butler in my house, because he would answer the door. I wasn't allowed to do dishes. I wasn't allowed to touch the vacuum cleaner. I mean, he was just a saint living in my house. But I remember coming in from work, and occasionally I would find him sitting on a chair and kind of curled up and looked very uncomfortable. And I would say, Pop, are you okay? And Pop's what we called my father-in-law. So I'd say, Pop, are you okay? And he'd kind of look at me and he'd go, I can't find my bedroom. Truth be known, it was only about 10 feet from where that chair was. That was our first sign that he was losing a little bit touch reality. Now, there's a simple test you can do. You can give them 5 words and see if they can repeat all 5 of them. And if they can't, that could be a sign. It's not necessarily, but it could be a sign, that something's going awry. Well, then my mom with Alzheimer's, she and my dad lived alone on a couple of acres in East Texas, and it was a couple of hours from me. And I'm going to tell you real quick, I have one sibling, and he lives 3,000 miles away. So this was falling on my shoulders. There's a statistic that says that 85% of caregivers are female. I don't know that the males can't do it. It's just that we females step up. And maybe because we're able to have children and all, we have a little more innate, caring heart or soul. I've met a few men that were really good at it, but most of the time it's a female that steps up. But my mom and dad lived together, and praise the Lord, I had a aunt. Now, she was only 7 years older than me, but 17 years younger than my mother. And it was her baby sister. And she lived 15 minutes from my parents' house. She was my eyes and ears on my parents when they were going through their Alzheimer's and Parkinson. And it was in the early stages. Now we're talking 20 years ago. And we all know the industry has changed dramatically over the past 20 years. Now, my dad always had the wish, and I guess it would be the wish of all of us, that you'd like to just go to sleep and not wake up. Oh, that would be an ideal way to pass on. Not happen today with medicine and doctors and everything that they've got nowadays. People are living longer and longer. Here's another little fact for you. If you have a 10-year-old in your family, 50% of 10-year-olds that are alive today are going to live to be 110. That's mind-boggling that people are living longer. But they've got body parts, they've got all of this medicine, they've got, doctors that can do just about anything. They can replace almost every internal organ you have. That's kind of scary. Maybe we're going to be replaced by the robots at some point. No, we won't go there. That's not even in my topic. But what I want to share with you is the joy I had of walking my journey with 3 parents. My dad had Parkinson's. Now, Parkinson's is that disease where you kind of lose a little muscular control. You have the tremors. You could even lose control of your swallowing of your saliva. I remember many times my dad would sit around with a hanky, hanging out of his mouth. But things can turn bad real quick, and you need to keep an eye on it. I remember my aunt calling me, and she said, Charlotte, you need to get down here, your check on your parents. Now, we went every weekend because my mom had forgotten how or why to cook. So my aunt did some of the cooking. I would cook on take food down to them on the weekends. And, they would eat leftovers, every other day or whatever, or if mom ate it all. Here's another fact. Alzheimer's patients crave sweets. So my dad just kept bundt cakes around the house. And there's a thing called sundowners. Sundowners means that usually Alzheimer's patients sometimes might sleep during the day and at night they roam. So my mother would roam around. She'd find that bun cake and she would eat, eat the bun cake. But I remember this phone call that my aunt made to me, and she said, Charlotte, your mom's got a rash and it goes from her toes up to her knees. And it really looks bad. And I said, well, take her to the doctor because I had medical power of attorney. She said, your dad won't let me. And then I got to thinking, if dad is being that stubborn, he probably won't let me either. So I started what I call my covert nursing action. I started calling different associations, different nurses down in East Texas where my parents lived. And I finally found a nurse that would get involved in my covert nursing action. And what happened was we picked her up one afternoon, and she, my husband, and I, during the middle of the week, we took off from work, and I told her to stay in the car because each of us had a mission. Now, hers obviously was to tend to my mother's, her rash that was on her legs. But my husband's job was to divert my dad to the backyard and keep him out there as long as he could. And my job was to unlock their front door and let this nurse in to doctor my mom. Well, when I unlocked the door and let this nurse, my mom was excited. She's a social person, and she going, oh, someone came to see me. So I sat mom down on her bed, and I knelt down beside her, and the nurse began to doctor my mother's wound on her leg. Well, she had gotten into poison ivy and obviously had scratched it till it was bleeding, and it had turned into impetigo. Now, this was kind of the nurse's observation, and she said she's probably going to need a shot. I said, please just do what you can. My dad's a Marine. He's a very stubborn man, and if he doesn't want me to take mom out of this house, it's going to take an act of Congress. And the reason I say that is I got to thinking after all of this had happened, transpired, that my dad probably was afraid if we took mom out of the house, he'd never see her again. He'd never see her again. Now they had kind of a well, they loved each other, but they kind of fought all the time. So I just was trying to respect my dad and take care of my mom. So the nurse began to, doctor my mom's leg, and mom was going, "Oh, that feels good," because I didn't notice it when I was there a few days earlier. But the nurse put salve on it, and then she started wrapping her leg. Oh my gosh, when she finished wrapping her leg, it looked like a war wound. Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be pretty good here. I'm going to get the nurse back out the door to my car before my dad knows. Because we've been in here 15 minutes with the nurse cleaning her wound and dressing her wound and then putting bandages on her wound. And then all of a sudden I looked at the door, and there was my dad. Now I'm 5 foot tall. My dad is 6 foot. Behind my dad was my husband, and he was going. It's like he kept him detained as long as he could. And I wouldn't hold that against him. And my dad stood in that doorway, and he says, "What's going on in here? And who is that strange woman in my house?" That's another thing Dad didn't like, strangers in his home. And all 5 foot of me stood up, and I walked over to my dad, and I looked him in his eye, and I said, "My mother had a problem, and I had to take care of it, sir." Now, my dad was a proud Marine. I don't know where that salute came from. I think it was a God thing. But we all stood there for a few minutes, and then my dad smiled. So I knew it was going to be okay. I also realized at that moment was probably when my dad realized that Sissy's going to take care of things. Sissy's what they call me because I have a brother. But there were things like that. Sometimes you have to think out of the box. Sometimes you have to step beyond the boundaries. And another thing is you also sometimes have to tell white lies, or you have to stretch the truth so that you do the good for them. Because my parents, like I say, my dad didn't want a stranger in the house. We'd already been through this scenario similar before. So I knew I had to handle it with kid gloves. Another thing that most people don't understand, Parkinson, people develop paranoia. They see things that aren't there. They hear what they think they heard. So there was a lot of paranoia with my dad. So it was something I treaded lightly, but it's a journey I wouldn't trade for anything. And there are 4 golden words that I use and that I think we all could use, and they are love. We need to love one another unconditionally, but we definitely need to love our parents unconditionally, no matter what happens. We need to respect them. We need to respect them for who, what, and where they are at that moment. And never tell them no. Never tell them they're wrong. They're your parents. Now, you may know that they're totally wrong, but never tell, especially if they're walking through Alzheimer's or Parkinson or dementia, you can't tell them no because they're already confused and they're not happy with themselves. So if you tell them no, that's only going to make you frustrated and them more frustrated. So when I say speak out of the box, you might have to, kind of go around and work things the right way. Another one of my 4 words is patience. Oh my gosh. You gotta have patience. You gotta have patience to respect them. You have to have patience. And the biggest word is forgiveness. Now, we've all had things in our life, but you need to forgive the past. You also need to forgive things that might happen in the future. And a more important thing is you need to forgive yourself, because I can promise you, none of us are saints, and you will think things that you thought you never would. But have patience and forgive yourself. So the 4 words are love, respect, patience, and forgiveness. And I know when I keep those close to my heart and on my mind, I will have done the best I can do. The world would be a whole lot different if we would use love, respect, patience, and forgiveness with one another. I think about what's going on in the world today. I'm 76 years old, as I said earlier, so I've lived through quite a change in my lifetime. I have great grandkids. As a matter of fact, I have 20 grandkids, and the oldest one is 30 years old. And she can remember her Nana when she was in her heyday. And that's what they called my mom. Now, my name is Me Mom, which is kind of cute. They call me Me Mom, and they call my husband Poppy. Now, I told you a little bit about my mom and Pop and my dad. What I didn't share with you about my dad. Now, my mom, she comes from a strong Christian family. She was the oldest of 4 sisters. Pop came from a large family of 7, a very strong Christian family, but not so much with my dad. Now, my dad was taken to church, but he lost his mother when he was 2 years old. He lost his dad when he was 12 years old. And he was in a foxhole in Guadalcanal at the age of 15. The Marines actually became a second family for him because he'd lost his parents. He had 2 sisters, one younger and one older, and all 3 of them kept being tossed from relative to relative to relative. They never found a stable household when they were growing up. I think that's why when he found my mom, that had to be the hand of God, because my mom's stability. My mom's the one that kept everything glued together.
So, another amazing woman. Her story reminds me a lot of my personal story with my parents and aging. I know, Terry, you have an aging mom as well. And they say that a lot of times the caregiver forgets to take care of herself when you're busy taking care of your elderly parents. How are you navigating that?
I am blessed that the third time I retired from an assisted living facility. It was just a godsend that I was able to work there part-time doing activities. And it was at a time when my brother was in a nursing home, not the same one, but he had dementia. And so I was able to figure it all out because I ended up being his caregiver. And then I tried to walk my mother through some of the things that would be going on with him when we would be visiting, and teaching her not to say, remember this and remember that, just start talking normally, and try not to, because it's frustrating because you don't remember.
Yeah.
So now I find myself in the position with her. And she told me one day, she says, I know why you went to that assisted living program, so that it could help you with your brother. Now you have to use all those techniques on me. So, and her short-term memory is, she's missing out on a lot of stuff, but then she remembers it. But I never say remember. So I'm navigating it, because in the meantime, I make sure that I exercise at least 4 to 5 days out of the week, and I exercise by walking. Sometimes, if I can't get to the facility, I will dance and work out and do weights and do rubber bands. I do some sort of an activity, do laundry going up and down the stairs, so that I maintain my health. During the COVID, prior to the COVID, I discovered my blood pressure was getting out of whack, and my doctor wouldn't take no for an answer. And I didn't want her to, at the beginning, I wanted her to just say, wait, let me do this on my own. So then that's when I lost the weight. I said, let me lose the weight. I know that's part of my blood pressure. She said, it goes with what you eat. You eat a lot of sodium. And I said, how did you know that? I love salty snacks. So anyway, she assured me that this little pill wasn't going to bother me, and my pride. And then after COVID hit, I was like, I didn't need any underlying conditions. Just give me whatever you want me to have.
Yes.
And so as it worked out, I'm on a 5 milligram pill now with a water pill. So, and she refused to take me off this year when I went in for my physical. She says, you are stressing over a 5 milligram pill. I said, well, it's my pride. I wasn't taking any medicine. I was just taking supplements, vitamins and all of that, and exercising. She says, you're on this pill until I decide. And I was like, okay, 5 milligrams is not bad. And I'm not having any problems. Everything is under control. Blood pressure is fine. So you have to take care of yourself, is true. And I learned that. And I used to have conferences with the family members.
Yes.
And when I was at the facility, and even when they used to visit my brother, and I would talk to them sometimes about their mannerisms and how they were treating people. And you need to come see her or him more often than you do. You don't want them to forget you completely, because with their illness, that's what's going to happen,
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
I used to counsel them, and I used to throw an event once a month where they would all come in, and we would base it around a holiday. One time we were out on the patio and we cooked hot dogs and stuff, and and had a DJ. Well, no, we had live entertainment, and he would come and sing, and so I would do that once a month, and I would personally send family members invites
and make sure that they're there.
make sure I said, you need to be here. And during the COVID, I stayed in touch with them, and I was like, okay, you guys, when's the last time you spoke? Because not all of them had a phone in their apartment. And when the last time you spoke with your family members? I said, I'm bringing my cell phone down here. You are going to call them. You need to talk to them. And I would call them and say, what's a good time for us to talk to you? Because they haven't talked to you in a while. I even would let them come outside their window if they had an outside window to knock on the window and wave at each other. And so, the compassion is what the workers need, and they don't always have that.
Yeah. It's a highly stressful job. It's a highly stressful environment to work in. Sometimes people lose their empathy because of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you did a great job, Terry. That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
let's move on to our next speaker. Who do we have?
What I had to do. Okay. Let's see. I got to pull it up again. What did I do with it?
I think it should.
Okay. The next one is going to be Anna Osheroff.
Yes.
Okay. I'm getting good at pronunciation. Okay. I learned my phonetics when I was in school. Okay. Anna Osheroff teaches business owners and leaders in organizations to market and run digital events for personal brand marketing so they become famous and make more money. She was born in Ukraine. And I know at this point she may be suffering because I think her mom and her dad, her mom and her dad had to be left in the country, part of the refugee program. So she moved to Melbourne, Australia at the age of 8. And so she completed all of her education, and she will tell us a lot more.
Okay, here we go.
Hi, my name is Anna Osheroff. I am based in beautiful Melbourne, Australia, and I am 41 years old. Today I've been asked to share my personal story. Now, usually my personal story would start with something like, my name is Anna. I was born in the former USSR, now known as Ukraine, and immigrated here with my family in 1989 as a refugee on a humanitarian refugee visa. Usually, I would just continue on with where I've lived, what I've done since the time that I have moved here. However, the recent world events have really shifted the way that this story now lands, both for me and for my audience, whether I'm talking to somebody personally or talking to a group. I'm not sure when you'll be watching this, but as I'm sure you're aware, there is currently a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And so today, when I say I was born in the USSR, formerly known as Ukraine, I have to pause and allow the person who I'm speaking with, as well as allow myself, to process, to understand, to build the 2 points together, and then sometimes have a brief conversation about what that is like for me. And what's really interesting is I've had to reflect on what that is actually like for me. Because you see, previously, it didn't even bother me. It didn't occur to me that this is something odd or different. I live in a highly multicultural city where there are people from all over the world. But recently, I've really had to delve in and think about what is important to me, what resonates for me, and what does actual identity mean? You see, I was born as a Jewish ethnic person in a communist country that no longer exists. I traveled here with my family, not really knowing that I was traveling here on a humanitarian refugee visa, and then became an Australian citizen. And I don't have any other citizenship. However, the conflict in Ukraine impacts me. The conflict in Ukraine impacts the country that I was born in. The land that I was born on is currently under attack. And even though the country, USSR, that I left no longer exists, the land that I was born on does. It affects me because I don't have any other citizenship but Australian. So technically, I am Australian. But the land that I was born on is currently under attack. I don't have family, and I'm very lucky to not have family in the Ukraine. However, my mum has friends who flee. We've had people that have come over and are now staying with us. And it has really raised the thought around identity. Who are we? Where do we belong? And how does that impact our lives? You see, when I moved over here at the age of 8, I was an only child. I still am an only child. And I took upon myself a very in-depth integration journey. I wanted to assimilate. In my young mind, the best way to fit into a new culture was to become just like the people here. And today, I fly straight under the radar. For most people, when I say that I was not born in Australia, sometimes they don't believe me because I look like a cis white female. I sound like a typical Australian person. And so the fact that I'm of Jewish ethnicity, that I was not born here, does not seem to resonate for most people. And yet, when I find myself in minority communities, I feel the most comfortable. And I've had to question, why is that? Why is it that it's easier for me to feel safety and comfort around others who came from a minority community? Why is it that despite the fact that I have assimilated and integrated into Australia, I still find it more comfortable to be around others who have had a similar journey to me? And the answers to that are sometimes there and sometimes not. But I guess the answers to that for me are that people have shared similar experiences. You know, when we've had to overcome difficulty in our lives, we do tend to form a different resilience as human beings. And it is that resilience that can bring people together. And I think that's why minority communities do integrate. And, you know, intersectional minority communities. Yes, I am female. That might or might not be a minority. It is a minority in the business world, which is what I've chosen to do with my life. I am Jewish. I don't tell people that, but when they find that out, that puts me into another category of a minority. I came here as a refugee. That's another minority community. And now I'm from a land that's currently under attack. How does that integrate into my story today? I hear you thinking. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about my life. So I was born in Australia, born in Ukraine. I moved to Australia when I was 8. I went through primary school, high school, and university. And then I spent 4 years traveling across 38 different countries to travel all around the world. Now, at university, I studied communications. And I really studied communications because I thought that's what I would enjoy. And you know what? I did. I was very lucky to have randomly chosen a career path that actually turned into a career. And part of the reason why I think I'm really good at communications is because I was not born here. I came over here and I was the first English speaker in my family. Even though English was not our first language for any of us, we all landed in this country without being able to speak the language. As a child, I was the first one to learn how to speak. And so I became the translator. I became a communicator for our family. And in order to be able to translate and communicate for others, we need to clearly understand two things. We need to understand, one, what this person is trying to communicate to this person, not what we think they're trying to communicate, but really understand what they're trying to communicate. And two, understand what this person is saying back. and then being able to make that connection. And so what's really interesting is in my business life, I went down the path of marketing communications. And the part that I feel that I excel most at, and the part where my clients tell me that I excel most at, is the part where I can clearly understand what this person is trying to sell, what is their product, what is their service, and who are they trying to sell it to, and then being able to communicate how they're going to sell that product, their service, and solve the problem for their customer. Now, this might be luck, this might be nature, or this might be nurture, but I 100% believe that my upbringing and the way that I had to be the translator for my whole family had something to do with it. Now, in today's world, we go through many different facets of careers. Statistically, they say that the future for young people today holds 7 to 10 different career paths. Now, I've definitely experienced that difference in career paths throughout my life. Although it's always been within marketing comms, it's been very, very diverse. I've worked within marketing agencies. I've started marketing agencies. I've been kicked out of the marketing agency that I started. And finally, I ended up walking out on my own and becoming a marketing consultant. Now, within that space of being a marketing consultant, I realized that what I love doing is teaching people how to do what they do, supporting those that support others. They say if you teach a man how to fish, he or she will be able to feed your community. So that's something that I really enjoy doing. So at some point during my initial foray into working for myself, I had a brilliant idea. I had to open a business event venue. It's called the Holistic Business Hub, and it was a venue where I could teach people how to market their business, small business owners with a social impact, those who want to make a bigger difference, teach them how to market themselves by running workshops, and lease out my venue to those same people to be able to run their own workshops. And what I quickly realized was, number one, that events, workshops, seminars, summits are the best way to build and grow your market, to be able to position yourself as an authority, to be able to build your credibility and visibility. And two, that the people that would hire my venue to run such events had no idea how to market them. And so sadly, what would happen is that they wouldn't sell tickets, they'd have to cancel their events, and the worst part is they wouldn't make the impact they wanted to make for everybody who was meant to be in the room. And so I decided it would be my journey to teach people who want to be able to run their own events, to be able to build their reputation, grow their revenue, and position themselves as thought leaders and make a difference. By running events, I was going to teach them how to plan, promote, and present those events in order for them to be successful. Now, COVID happened, and sadly, I had to close the Holistic Business Hub. But I did not stop. All of that knowledge, all of that learning I took on. And so was born the Niche Industry Influencer Program. Within this program, we teach people online how to use email marketing, social media, and digital events to build their brand reputation and increase their revenue by positioning themselves as niche industry influencers. And that brings me here today.
What an incredible story. You know, if anybody had taken one look at you, one would never have guessed your background. You fit in so well into the Australian landscape, unlike an implant like me from Zimbabwe with my chocolate brown skin. I don't fit in. You know, I've lived in New Zealand for 21 years, and there hasn't been a day when I haven't been asked where I'm from. 21 years later, it's still the same story. But what's happening right now in Ukraine does impact and affect all of us. And particularly you, because you have people that you know there, although your family's not there, your mom still has a lot of ties there. What is the community from Ukraine doing, the ones who are here in Australia, to try and help and support back in Ukraine?
It's a good question. There's different people are doing very different things. Within my own close community, my family is looking to be able to support people one-on-one. So my mum's best friend, who was in Ukraine, she's just sort of escaped to Germany where her daughter lives. Her son was living in Bali. He was a digital nomad living in Bali, but he still is a Ukrainian citizen. So he has now received a visa for Australia, and he's currently living at my mum's place. So we're hosting a person who otherwise may have had to go back to Ukraine. He's 30 years old. He would have had to go there and stay. My auntie is specifically looking for people to be able to support financially one-on-one. Our extended family and friends have started some fundraisers. Some of our family friends are in Ukraine and are back to support the community there for rebuilding purposes. Some people in my wider community have had campaigns around trying to get their relatives into Australia. Australia has had a really good response. They've expedited the visas for humanitarian refugees escaping the conflict in Ukraine, so people can come to Australia faster. And they've just recently announced a 3-year humanitarian visa that will enable people from Ukraine to be able to work, to be able to study and have access to Medicare. That visa has been announced, hasn't been legislated, but it has been announced. So different people within the community are doing very different things in order to be able to support others in Ukraine.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely awesome to hear. Now, let's move to you as a young woman, a young child, being transplanted to a foreign country. What was that experience like, not having the language skills, having to learn everything from scratch? How old were you, and what was that experience for you?
I was 7 years old when my family decided to leave. So we need to understand, I guess, the landscape that I lived in. When we were leaving, I was living with my grandma and grandpa. When I was born, my mum, dad, my grandpa and grandpa all lived together in one household. And at the age of 3, my parents moved out. I stayed with my grandparents. Now, the reason I stayed with my grandparents is because the school that was closest to my grandparents' house was nicer to Jewish children. So I stayed with my grandparents and started school. I was told that we were leaving the USSR the day before we left.
Oh, wow.
The day before we left, because there was fear. There was fear around me telling my friends, the government finding out, and us potentially being stopped from being able to leave. So the day before we left, I was told that tomorrow, you, your mum and your dad, who I have not been living with, but really wanted to live with. As a little kid, I was like, I want to be with my parents. I was told tomorrow, you're leaving.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were packed up, we were shipped off to the airport, but we came here on a humanitarian refugee program, which means that we actually left the USSR, but we had to get our visa to come to Australia and go through processing. So we went from the USSR to Vienna in Austria. We spent 10 days in Vienna. Then we went to Italy. We went to Ladispoli, which is a town sort of 40 minutes northeast of Rome. And we spent 6 months in Ladispoli going through processing to come to Australia. And then we flew to Australia. And in Italy, I had a great time. I was young, I was carefree, I had no school. My parents didn't have a lot of time to manage what I was doing because they had to work, and I was sort of looked after by a program that was an Israeli program that came to Italy to try and convince the Jewish population to move to Israel. So they ran religious school, which was kind of stories and videos and cartoons. And then the rest of the time we were kind of like running around and having a good time. And then we came to Australia. The move to Australia for me was, I think it's very much for me, I have to look at it as hindsight, because I didn't think about what that was like. That was just reality. So we moved over to Australia. I went to a Jewish Orthodox private school for 3 months because it was free for my parents to have me there. And then we moved into, suburbs in Melbourne, and I went to a normal primary school where I quickly realized that I was very different to everybody around me. And my whole thought process was to be accepted and to assimilate. Like, I remember looking at a journal entry that I wrote. It's literally the only page in this whole diary. I was in grade 5, and it said, Anna's journey to popularity. That is the only diary entry. And I didn't realize that was so important to me, but I really focused on fitting in and being part of the community and being accepted by those around me.
Absolutely incredible. So now let's take you into your future and have a conversation with the future Anna. You're now 100 years old, you're wise, you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children and your grandchildren. If you could have a conversation with the older you, based on how you're living your life right now, what would you say to that woman?
Well, first of all, I don't have any children, and I'm not sure that I will. So I might not be surrounded by my children or my grandchildren. My dogs and cats, my nearest and dearest, whoever those people are.
Yes.
And I was having a conversation with my older self. I guess the things I would like to know is, did I live a happy life? And is there anything that I regret? That's actually all I would like to know. Everything else, I don't think is of any consequence. As long as I lived a happy life and I don't have anything to regret, then I will be satisfied with the life that I lived.
Well, based on how much you've traveled and seen the world, I think you've lived a spectacular life up to this point already. And there's more from there. And I thank you so much for coming online and sharing your amazing story with us. How can people get hold of you? This business that you are running is pivotal right now because of COVID. A lot of people are having to create digital presence online. What is the best way for people to get hold of you?
The best way for people to get hold of me is just Google my name, Anna Osherov, and whichever pathway of connection you'd like to connect on will pop up. I'm lucky to have a name that's not very common. LinkedIn, my business website is annaosherov.com. My LinkedIn is under Anna Osherov, Facebook, Instagram, whichever pathway you fancy is the best way to connect. I check all the channels.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. It's been an absolute honor meeting you. And we're both in Melbourne at the moment. So I'm hoping we can connect and have a
I'd love to do that.
That would be awesome. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. I am always delighted and surprised by the kind of guests I'm attracting on this show. I never know what to expect on a day-by-day basis. And the story is really something unique. If you can help with the situation in Ukraine, there are websites like the Red Cross who are trying to galvanize funds to help the displaced families. Please get in touch with me directly. I have a friend who is on the border in Ukraine who's also trying to help in the humanitarian efforts there. I think if everybody in the world does a little something, we can make a difference in very, very small ways. So thank you again, Anna. Thank you for shining a light on this immediate crisis. It really makes us pause and realize how lucky we are wherever we are in the world. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for having me as well. It's been such a joy and a pleasure to be able to have a chat and to share my story, and hopefully it makes an impact for people.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Anna, don't go away. I want to offer you an opportunity to speak at our next online summit. So wait for a second. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time. Okay. So that was the beautiful Anna. I'm hoping when I go back to Melbourne, I'll get to meet her in person. We had a comment from LinkedIn. Dorinda Britton, thank you so much for watching on LinkedIn. Please share this video with your colleagues and your friends. We want our videos to go viral and really make people aware of the work that we're doing through the social impact movement. Thank you for participating online. What was your take, Terry, of this last lady's video?
She's very energetic, and I don't think she'll have any problems with keeping, continuing as she is, with getting leaders involved and recognizing people. And she has a history that, I've been blessed not to have had gone through that, because I've always been in the United States. But basically, it's the same thing when you have racial strife and all of that everywhere. And it's sad. I heard something at church today that we are all one blood. God created Adam and Eve. We are all connected. And why can't we all just get along and do what we need to do to make this world a better place? And it's not the world that's the problem, it's the people that's in it.
Yeah, we all have to change one by one. But we are a long way from getting there and getting it right, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We can only hope. We can only hope. All right, so let's move on to our next speaker, Ms. Terry. Who do we have next?
Okay, we have Charlotte. No, Terry. We have Denise Martin.
Okay.
You already did Charlotte. We have Denise Martin. Okay. She's a mom, an author, a harpist, a comedian, an activist. Wow, wide range. Her credits include Third Degree Black, Taekwondo school for a dozen years. She's owned and operated it. Author, self-published her autobiography, Eating My Way to Heaven. She's entertained people from Portland to Las Vegas in the past 7 years with her chops on the electric harp. Denise can teach you about erectile dysfunction in a 1-minute song titled "A Spoonful of Sugar Makes Your Erection Go Down." She is also an activist, as I stated, and a political songwriter. Denise, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, my name is Denise Martin. I'm here in rainy Portland, Oregon, and I'm 65 years old. And I became the accidental face of homelessness in my city, Portland, Oregon, last summer. And I want to use the celebrity I bumped into to change the conversation about homelessness, how people become homeless, and what they need to get out of that ditch. And my recent stint with homelessness because of COVID helped me understand that I'd kind of been in denial most of my life about how insecure I've been housing-wise. And I'm realizing now, as I really dive into evaluating my own story, that poverty is a mindset. And the more you stumble in and the deeper you get into poverty, the harder it is to shift that mindset to find your way out. So that's one of the many issues I want to help address. But what happened to me is one moment I had a life. I was an entertainer in Las Vegas. I'm an electric harpist. I wasn't rolling in dough, but I was secure, had a home, and my son and I were making it. And the next day, the whole town closed because of a pandemic. And I moved into my car. I returned to Oregon and parked my son in a friend's garage on a couch. And I lived in my car, pulling my harp out of the trunk and busking my way through a pandemic. And I called myself the Beverly Hills of the homeless because I had an expensive car. I was warm and comfortable at night, and I could pull my harp out anywhere and make some cash. But it costs a lot of money to live in a car and travel around and find a safe place to park and stay and sleep. Well, July of last year, I wrote an op-ed to my local paper. We have a big problem with homelessness here in Portland, Oregon, as I know the rest of the world is struggling with. We have a tent city on every sidewalk, and it just keeps getting worse. And the conversation is getting worse. So I wrote an op-ed to explain why the stigma around homelessness is why we can't solve the problem. I became Portland's face of homelessness after that op-ed hit. And people were visiting me, mostly the wealthy, because I was playing in front of a wealthy restaurant on the waterfront in Portland. And the conversation was always about how the homeless are just drug addicts and they're lazy. And no matter how much I talked until I was blue in the face, I was really having a hard time changing that stigma. The first time I landed into homelessness was because of domestic violence. The second time I was employed by a man who turned out to be a fraud. And when I realized I had no paychecks, I was evicted with a child. And this last time, a pandemic wiped me out at the knees. So the idea that everyone who lands in homelessness is just lazy and they messed up their life or they just blew all their money on drugs is just not true. And putting us all in the same category anyway will never work. We're not the same. We have different levels of economic background. We have different levels of intelligence. We have different skill sets. We have way different levels of trauma that may have sent us to the street. We have been banged up, lots of domestic violence, families bounced to the streets. So if we're just going to assume that all of these people are lazy drug addicts, we certainly can't solve this problem. So I was lucky enough to attract more media attention, and the local news channel followed my story. And I made my way into motels where my son and I were spending $2,400 a month to have a roof over our head. And I couldn't get out of that cycle. I was strumming my little fingers to death and borrowing money. And I couldn't, it was very difficult in a minimum wage job, which I had picked up, to overcome that. I couldn't make enough money to get out of the motels. It was just an endless loop. And finally was able to get some help and put away enough money I could get into a home. And now I'm spending half of what I was spending in motels. My son and I share a room in a home. So now we're a little more stable. And with this newfound stability, I have started a whole new venture to try and change the conversation around homelessness, to raise money for the causes and the organizations that are already out there doing brilliant work, and to build an instant village here in Portland, Oregon. I know it sounds like a lot from a woman who's barely housing secure myself, but I can barely sleep at night thinking about all the people I left behind on the street. I want people to know that working for a company like Amazon is like being on a plantation. There's just, you can't work hard enough. It feels like there's someone behind you with a whip every moment. They demand you work overtime. It's physically exhausting. And I was homeless, living in my car in their parking lot. I couldn't work that hard without a place to live and eat and survive. Couldn't do it. Had the same experience at FedEx, trying to throw thousands of pounds of freight a day. Homeless, tired, hungry. It's crazy. And if you should lose a job like that, or you can't keep up, or they cut your hours, boom, then you become one of those people on the sidewalk. I want to tell this story because what I want people to get from my story is that there, but for the grace of God, go I. I had a friend, my running buddy at the time, and I had a friend who was very wealthy. And we were homeless. We were going from Portland to LA to an opportunity to share some housing on an organic farm, be of service. And we stopped to see him in Northern California. Man had millions. He made us buy our own coffee, knowing that we had nothing. And that was really the food money we were spending. But we stopped and spent our only money of the day to have coffee with this wealthy man. Well, fast forward 2 years later, and Paradise, California burned down. And there he was standing in his driveway with his 2 dogs. He still had millions in the bank, but he was so overwhelmed about losing his whole life in an instant that guess who he called for comfort? The homeless people. Hey, they'll know what to do. Even with all that money in the bank, he could not cope with the idea that his life just went sideways. And throughout COVID, I can't imagine how many people just went from a real life to their small business closing, and boom, next thing you know, they're in a tent on the sidewalk. So first, we have to boots on the ground interview the homeless population in our city, find out who's so mentally ill that we've got to find them treatment and a way to pay for it immediately. Find out who's fleeing domestic violence and needs safety and a shelter bed immediately. Find out who's willing to work, who's able to work, and get them a phone and a shower and a way to keep that phone charged so they can communicate with an employer. You cannot get a job without a cell phone. Everything's electronic. I went to 5 businesses to get my last job. 3 of them told me to apply online. So the old 1920s, go to the back of the restaurant and ask for work, just doesn't apply anymore. People have to be tech savvy to get a job. Really hard to do in a tent. And the bathroom situation has gotten insane with COVID. So even a person with the best intentions of going out on a job interview can't even find a place to relieve themselves or freshen up. We have to help people out of the ditch. There's no such thing as just pull yourself up by the bootstraps in homelessness anymore. There's just too many people flooding the system. So it's going to have to be us, private citizens, reaching out to our fellow earthlings, our global roommates, and helping. I wouldn't have made it off the streets without help. Family members, strangers, associates, my workplace, everybody. It takes a village to get a person off the street. So I'm creating a new endeavor, a portal for raising money for homeless causes called Harpyoki. And I'm going to have a celebrity version called Celebrity Harpyoki for the homeless, where celebrities can pop in via Zoom, just like I am today from the other side of the world, sing a song with us, and encourage our viewers to give to the organizations that are helping on a global level, on a national level, and here on a local level, to get those funds flowing to organizations who already know what to do. And then I want to use my rising star with that exposure to keep changing the conversation. The homeless on the streets of Portland need cell phones. They need more bathrooms. We need little charging ports where they can get their phone charged. We need showers. And we need to talk to those people instead of having city meetings to decide where to move them or how to disrupt their lives. So that's this phase of my life. I've lived kind of large and wild in my poverty, in my housing insecurity. After growing up rich and privileged, I get a unique perspective. I've seen it all, and I've been privileged to do it all with a fairly hefty IQ and an open mind. And I'm coming to the table with a voice for the homeless who don't have one.
Wow. Denise, what an incredible story. You know, for a lot of us who look at the US from the outside, everybody's under the impression that the streets of the United States are paved with gold. Until I came and lived in the US for a while, I had that impression too. But you're so right that just basic things can be a block to block somebody finding a job, getting employment, just washing and freshening up so you are presentable to go for an interview, charging a phone, internet access. And the United States is the first world country, but people are living under the poverty line, just like in third world countries right now. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Now, housing insecurity, especially for women over 50, is a big issue. It's not just in the US. I'm seeing it here in Australia, in New Zealand. A lot of women find themselves at a later part of their lives. Some were married, went through divorces, lost everything, were totally dependent on their husbands, and then they're on the street. So if you could have a conversation with a woman right now who's comfortable, who's married, who has everything, but relies totally on a husband or a partner, if you could give somebody 3 nuggets of wisdom to prepare for the eventuality of something like this happening to them, what would you say?
Well, I don't want to assume that they might be exposed to domestic violence and just have to fly out a door with a baby in the arms like I did, or a husband who's just gonna go sideways and harm them. But the simplest things can make your life go sideways. I am 65, and I was planning my retirement with my very best friend. We've been working together on natural health and spiritual things for the last 25 years. And we had a plan to work our way to the grave together. And he passed away in February of cancer. And boom, I'm totally alone with starting a whole new plan for my retirement. And yeah, I'm scared to death. And I am so gifted. I'm so blessed. I have so many outs compared to a woman who spent her life dependent on someone else. I've had to be independent all my life. I would counsel them to assume that anything could happen, tragic or amazing, that you might end up alone. And what does that look like? Who is going to help you if you have a problem? How are you going to reinvent your life in a moment like I had to, when the whole darn city I was living in closed? You couldn't even walk down the sidewalk. And so I think independence of mind, and no matter how well we prepare, the future can just wipe us out in a heartbeat, like my very wealthy friend found out. But we can enforce ourselves. We can believe how powerful we are, that we can overcome. And what I'm finding is you got to build a village. I had all my eggs in that one beautiful man's basket. We weren't husband and wife. We were best friends, but every day we filled up each other's lives. And now here I am alone. So I should have built a village. And I'm now building a village. So no matter how secure you are in your beautiful marriage, or with all your adult children, or whatever bosom family you are attached to, widen your circle, create a bigger village. And that village needs you as much as you need them.
That's a very, very touching story and a reality for most women in the world right now. The number of women over 50 who are homeless is actually quite shocking. And Denise ended up on the street. You can tell she's a smart woman, but just fell into the wrong personal circumstances that brought her to that point. What was your take on that presentation, Terry?
It was very touching. But that's one reason why I continue to do what I'm doing. I have a wonderful husband. And when those other two failed, I knew I had to depend on me. My grandmother taught me, God bless the child who has her own. And so I always made it a point that I could be self-sustaining if I had to. And that was one reason why I went to school, developed skills, and I keep learning and I keep looking, because, I know for a fact that people that are homeless are not homeless because they choose to be and that they're lazy. But a lot of people don't understand that. They fall in on hard times, and sometimes some of them don't know how to get out of it. So I'm hoping that our podcast, and some of them may be listening because I'm sure they all have cell phones. Everybody's got a cell phone, even if it's a purchase monthly minutes or whatever, but everybody has one. And maybe they will see some of these interviews and say, I could probably do something. Let me get up and just try to do. It's not a death sentence to be homeless.
Mm. There is hope. I just wish her all the best of luck, and hopefully her campaign pays off and she can use her influence and celebrity status to be the face of homelessness that people don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people need to see someone who looks like them that they can relate to, so they can relate to the issues at hand. All right, Miss Terry, let's move on to our next speaker.
Okay. We have Carrie Wakelo. She's a keynote speaker, award-winning author, Chief Operating Officer of Actualize Consulting, a winner of the Women with Vision 2021 Award. RYT, we'll find out what that means. 500, certified children's yoga instructor and founder of Zendaway, a company that encourages holistic wellness. She brings gratitude and wellness to families and corporations. I'm ready to hear what Carrie has to say. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Terry.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Carrie Wakelo. I am based in Reston, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. We call it Northern Virginia, and I am 47 years old. And sharing a bit about my story, I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley on a farm, and my family had a business, a manufacturing business, and we grew up not only with a working farm, which was managed by a farm manager, but then this manufacturing company. So my upbringing was really hard work, not only from the farm side of things, but then also this company business that we had. So I started working when I was 5 years old. My grandmother was the chairman of the board. My grandfather had passed away when I was 5. So she kind of took over, and then my mom and her brothers took over. And what I really saw with that was they weren't always on the same page on things. And there was a bit of what could I say around the culture at the company and with the family wasn't exactly like, didn't feel good to me. That being said, they've been very successful and all has been well. It's just not exactly how I would do business. So I ended up going into university, studied finance and marketing. I even have a minor in psychology. And I went down this path going into consulting. And I always really was focused on people first and foremost. And then in 2005, I was moving to another state, and my brother was starting up a company called Actualized Consulting. And so I started with that and building out the organization. So for the first 5 years, we were very focused on financially and operationally getting the business up and running. And then in 2010, I literally was burnt out personally. I had 2 children. I didn't take proper maternity leave. And then at that same time, I had one of my best friends try to commit suicide. And that event, because I thought she was very happy and everything was going right in her life, it really made me stop to be like, am I really happy and what I'm doing? And when I unpacked it, I wasn't really happy, not only at work because we were just pushing, but also in my marriage, which from the outside looking in looked very, very good. So in 2010, 5 years after I'd been at Actualize, I knew I needed to make a change, and I wasn't exactly sure what that was. So I started to go down a bit of a internal path. I read countless self-help books. I did 500 hours of yoga teacher training. And what I realized is that I had always been on the go and busy versus just taking some time to sit and reflect. And then that's when all the answers started coming. How do we shift our organization? Because at the time we had 33% turnover. And then what do I do about being in a marriage that wasn't fulfilling? So I ended up staying with Actualize, which I'm still there now. And we have been really focused on our people and people first and foremost. And I didn't have like this huge plan, but what I decided in 2010 was that I couldn't like compartmentalize my life. Like I had to show up the same person at work, at home, with my friends, with my family. And that was leading from and being a person that is kind, that is grateful, that focuses on their self-care, and really overall wellness, right? And so that's what I've been infusing into my life with my kids and family and work. And so, my story is really that you don't have to be a different person at work or with your family. Really being yourself first and foremost can be extremely powerful, and how you show up everywhere and being that authentic self.
It sounds like you have been on quite a journey and you had to adjust your current way of being to survive this new world we're living in now. A lot has changed because of the pandemic, correct?
It has. And I was already on the path before the pandemic. So it really helped me adjust and help other people along the way as well, because I think many people realized that they needed to have more of, and I used to call it work-life balance, but now I'm calling it life-work balance, right? And that's something that I've been a big proponent of for the last 12 years. And so I was set up really well to handle the pandemic and and even grow further as an individual.
So it really stretched you. So did this lead to your new business venture now? What are you focused on now?
Yeah, so within the last 12 years, I've written 2 books. One is Culture Infusion, 9 Principles to Create and Maintain a Thriving Organizational Culture. And then the next one, which actually came out during the pandemic, is Gratitude Infusion. And that book has been really powerful during these more trying times because gratitude is completely free. There's ways that we can be appreciative and grateful to everybody in our lives that can really help, lift the vibration. And so that's what I've been really focused on. And not only within my own company, but bringing that to other companies, other individuals, team building events. And it's such an easy way, and it feels like gratitude always feels good, right?
It sure does. And it does help just reset how you're feeling internally when you pull 1 or 2 key things in your life that you're really grateful for. So give me a description of your day. How does it start? How do you keep yourself balanced?
It depends on the day, but what I always say is I have this toolbox of practices that I go to. So depending upon what I need in that day, but what I always do is I need to have some sort of movement, whether that's a short walk, even if I'm not feeling well, even if I go for a 5-minute, I need to get some sort of movement in my body. And then what I use gratitude for is really with all my interactions. And when you're being grateful to other people, it's not only to them, but it's also, why am I even grateful for what I've done today and how I'm showing up, right? So I focus on gratitude quite a bit. And where I find it very powerful is if you're in a challenging situation, instead of focusing on that spiral or the stress of the situation, okay, to ground yourself, what am I grateful for right now? What can I be happy about versus this challenge that I'm dealing with? And many times too, if you are dealing even in a conflict with somebody, if you lead with, I'm really grateful for something within the situation, maybe they're teaching you a lesson, it's going to diffuse the challenge or the conflict with that person as well.
I like that. I'm going to ask you a few questions and I will go off camera when you answer because I want to repurpose the videos for our TikTok account.
Okay.
So I want to take you back to, let's say, 3-4 years ago. If you could go back, let's say at the time of crisis when your friend almost committed suicide, and if you could have a conversation with the younger you, based on what life has taught you up to this point, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give that younger person?
Okay. The 3 nuggets I would give my younger self would be to not take things so seriously. Make sure that you're always having fun and focusing on the good and every day. Also being authentic and true to who you really are. And I believe we all have that internal gut feeling, that intuition, listening, really, really listening to how you're feeling and those signs is extremely important. And number 3 would be to not be so hard on myself, because I think that's something that we all struggle with, me personally too, being that overachiever type, but not being so hard on myself, I think would be the 3rd one.
So now let's give a few pieces of advice to young moms, women who are juggling so many balls right now. Struggling with motherhood. Some people are still having to parent from home. How are you doing it? How many kids do you have? How are you? You said work-life balance, but life-work balance, right? Start with that. Your work-life balance. How does that look? How are you juggling all of these balls?
So I like to call it life-work balance. And I have 2 kids. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, each with different. They're completely different kids. And, there's a lot that I have to do as a mom. And then I also am the chief operating officer of a consulting company. And I'm very active in my community. So how do I juggle all of that? I would say the first tip that I always go back to and I remind myself of every day is that you have to take care of yourself, because that old saying of, or when you're in the airplane, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself. So you have to take time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, you have to take time for yourself each and every day and make sure that you're doing things that inspire you and lift you up, because you can't be a good employee or a good in a relationship or a good mom if you're not taking care of yourself first and foremost.
Fantastic. Now, let's move on to the ways you're helping people. You've written these 2 amazing books. Let's go through each book and what can people expect from each of the books that you've written?
Okay. So the first book is Culture Infusion, 9 Principles to Create and Maintain a Thriving Organizational Culture. And that's how can you, as a leader or anybody in the organization, really come through as a leader and really make sure that you have this thriving organizational culture. And it's from how you effectively communicate, how you focus on the well-being of your team members. Leading by example is a huge one. I also talk about how, surveying your team members about things that are on your mind, so you really can come back with a collective resolution for forward movement within your organization. And then also really focusing on team connection, which is extremely important, especially as many companies are still doing remote working or even hybrid working. The other book is Gratitude Infusion, and that's just a kind of a spinoff from Culture Infusion. And it's very focused on ways that you can practice gratitude, not only personally, but also in your organizations, how you can do that with your teams. An example of that is with my own internal team. I don't do it as a firm wide. We do more things around recognizing star players, key players, awesome team players, like really publicly being grateful. And then just as we practice daily. So there's lots of easy, accessible, free tools on gratitude. But then with your own internal team, one of my favorites is each week we do something that we're internally grateful for, externally grateful for, like somebody on the team, or it could even be a friend or a family member. And then also what was a win for that week. So both books, lots of practical tips that you can use with your teams and also personally.
Fantastic. Now, what is the best way that people can get hold of you? Are you coaching? Are you mentoring other women who are in this space?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things, is to coach, be an advisor. But LinkedIn is definitely the easiest way. Carrie Weckelo on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Twitter and Instagram as well as Carrie Weckelo.
And what is your website?
Actualizeconsulting.com.
Okay, so we're going to share that at the bottom of the screen. If anybody out there is inspired to get hold of Carrie and solicit her help, please get in touch. And Carrie, parting question. If time was an illusion and I could take you into the future, so you could have a conversation with the future you're 100 years old, you've got your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats, and you're sitting on your rocking chair. Based on how you're living your life right now, what would you say to this wise woman who's led you that far?
Keep dreaming big. Don't be small. Keep being big. You have a lot of passion, so keep helping people and keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up.
Awesome. Carrie, thank you so much for coming online and being with us today and sharing your amazing story. Thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story movement is trying to collate a collection of women's stories that are unusual, that are empowering, that are uplifting. And Kerry, you certainly have demonstrated that this morning for us. So have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Okay. So that was yet another inspiring young woman. It's amazing how in life we get these wake up moments, when she talks about her friend who almost committed suicide. You could be going through your day thinking everything is normal, everybody is happy, and then you find out that someone close to you is not in a very good place in terms of their mental health. There's a lot of mental health challenges right now with the state the world is in as well. What was your feedback, Terry?
Yes, it's sad, but I don't know. I used to work in a mental health facility, but I wasn't in contact with patients or counseling or anything. I was in the financial area, but it's sad because I had to go up and talk to them in the inpatient unit about money, and they have just been admitted because of some mental problems. And I would tell the nurse, how long have they been up there? Because one time I went up there the very next morning and this guy was hallucinating and he was looking over my shoulder talking about they're coming to get you. And I was like, oh no, oh no. So, I mean, I've had some experiences and it's like, I just simply, excused myself and went to the nurse's counter and I said, don't you ever put me in that position. I am not trained on how to handle that. But now I know how to handle that because shortly after that, this one came up to the counter and they were allowed to have a cigarette. And so there were cigarettes sitting on the counter. And he reached over the counter. And I don't know what it was, but I just got his hand and I tapped it and I said, now you know you're not supposed to do that. He says, you're not going to let me have it. I don't know why I was treating him like a child. It just came out naturally, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I should change my profession. Here it is automatic, not realizing down the road that I would have to be dealing with, people, dementia and all of that, people with illnesses and having that compassion. Yeah.
Compassion is everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just never know what takes a person to be in a certain state of mind.
No. And you always have to be aware. My mother watched us like a hawk. Oh man. She would say something and she'd say, what's that expression for on your face? Oh, and it's like
she could read you.
Yeah. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And she does that today. Yeah. Yeah. She does that today, and I'm just grateful that I have someone that watches me all the time,
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And, there used to be this saying, what would Jesus say or what would Jesus do? And my second question would be, what would my mama say if I did this?
Love it.
Yeah. But
wonderful.
it is sad. And a lot of people don't even recognize. They don't even recognize that their family members or friends are in trouble.
Are in trouble, yeah. And that's the sad part. People find out too late. People have done something or self-harmed or committed suicide. So it's just having that awareness, I think.
Yeah. So with being in those different facilities, I've learned to be able to read depression, and things like that, which lead to a lot of issues. If I don't see anybody coming out for their meals or anything when I was at that facility, I would go around and say, and why aren't you dressed yet? why aren't you getting dressed? You know? And I tell my mother that sometimes when I come in and I'll say, you haven't put on any clothes all day? Get up, put on clothes. It'll make you feel better. You know you love clothes. You know you love them. You know? And she said, but I'm not going anywhere. I said, you have to put on clothes. You just have to. You have to look good for you. You know, you don't dress up for other people. You dress up for yourself.
For yourself, yeah.
I said, that's what you taught me, you know?
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh,
It's
here
so
she goes
beautiful.
again, you know. So she knows I'll give it right back to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, she's lucky she has you, Terry.
Oh, I'm lucky to have her.
So we have time for one more speaker today. Let's go with Linda. Let's see. Yes, let's go with Linda.
Linda Murphy?
Marshall.
Okay.
And we'll put the other lady to tomorrow's schedule.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so today we have Linda Murphy Marshall. She's a multilingualist and writer with a PhD in Hispanic languages and literature. She has several other degrees in Spanish and Portuguese. She has been published and has a forthcoming in the Los Angeles Review Memoir magazine and several others. And I'm sure she'll tell us all about her story. She's an amateur painter. Her paintings have been featured in shows at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., the Loden Academy of the Arts Foundation, and the Columbia Arts Center in Maryland. Her painting, Mirror Mirror, was featured on the cover of Adana Literary Journal. Wow. And
hey.
I can't wait to hear what she wants to tell her story.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome, Linda.
Here. My name is Linda Murphy Marshall. I'm based in Columbia, Maryland, and I'm 71 years old. And I have written a book, a memoir called Ivy Lodge, a memoir of translation and discovery. It's the first book I've written, and it goes back into my childhood and adolescence and young adulthood. And I think it has a different kind of perspective because I worked and still work part-time as a translator, as a linguist. So what I did is when my parents died, I went back home to my home in the middle of the country, in the Midwest, outside St. Louis, to help my siblings go through my parents' home. And I, in essence, translated all the objects and the house and everything contained in it. Not everything, certain things and they brought out certain memories for me. So in a way, I was able to retranslate or maybe even translate my life for the first time. And one of the things in reading about Gertrude I really loved is you said that we were told we were poor and we believed it. And I think my whole life I had been told certain things about myself. And almost in a childlike way, I believed those things. If someone told me I was, this had this certain trait, I believed it. If they said I had that one, I believed it. I took everything quite literally. So when I went back after they died, I rediscovered sort of my identity by looking at all these things that had been a part of my childhood. The piano I played growing up, the cake holders my mother put on our cakes, furniture, rooms, all of this, in essence, not really, of course, but spoke to me. And I translated all those images and objects and memories I translated them into a new concept of who Linda, was. And that's why the name of my book is Ivy Lodge, a memoir of translation and discovery. So in essence, I rediscovered myself. Not that I didn't know who I was, but I think I had a greater understanding of who I was. I grew up in an extremely patriarchal family, and And that was just a lot of that was just a sign of the times. And I grew up in a very conservative family, and again, that was the 1950s and 60s. So again, that was just a function of the atmosphere and the time in which I lived. And I had been led to believe that I could only go so far and do so much. So when I went back and started re-examining all these things in my life, and rooms I'd been in, I'd played in, I'd slept in, I'd had conversations in, I began to see things in a new light. And just as for my work, I began to translate all these different things. And I remembered lots of conversations that had taken place, incidents that had taken place, and I saw them in a different light. Another thing is that when my parents were alive, I think I was so desperate for their love and acceptance. I tended to see myself through their eyes. And so when they were gone, as sad and I was, and as horrible as that was, it freed me to sort of take a look at myself and to take away that filter and to say, but who am I really? And of course, I did it at a pretty late age. I did it in 2000 and 2000, the year 2000. So I was 50 years old. It was a little, I guess I'm a late bloomer. So I started late in life to do that, re-examining everything. And a lot of that just entailed like walking around the yard in my parents' home. But there was also an aspect of my parents would tell us that we were a certain way, the whole family. And I believe that. And it was very, a lot of it was sort of appearance versus reality. And it looked like we lived in a big mansion. And if you look, you probably can't see it here. If you look at the cover of my book, you probably can't see it. It looks like this huge home. But when you go inside the home, the actual livable space is much, much smaller. The second story is only maybe a third finished, or it was when I was growing up. The basement was enormous, but it was taken over by my father's trains. And my parents had all these amazing hobbies, and that really filled all the space in their lives. So there was a lot of that also. It's like how we look to the outside world. I discovered as I retranslated my life through these objects, through these memories, and through being back there, I discovered that there was a lot of appearance versus reality, that what everybody else saw was sort of a myth in essence. So and the book was very cathartic because I was able to process all that. It took me 6 years to write. And it started out as an essay that I did for a writing class at the Iowa Summer Writers Workshop. And it was writing about nowhere. And I wrote about my house for 10 pages in this essay. And just writing the 10 pages, I thought, oh my goodness, I really had no awareness of what of what my life was, good, bad, indifferent. And so that just started this exploration into my life. And as I said, my skills as a translator, because you're taking one thing and you're changing it into something, you're changing it into a different reality, but it has to reflect the truth. So what I've done is I've written my truth, or I've tried to write what is my truth. And I know that if my siblings wrote their truth, it would be a different book, or my parents if they were still alive. But this is my truth, and for me, that's was a very bold thing to do, because I had just never done that before. So that was my goal, and also hoping maybe somebody else would read it and be comforted by it or identify with it, because it was sort of a lonely existence in a way, because if everyone thinks that you are this very privileged, rich person living in a mansion and everything is ideal, but it's not, it's you're sort of thrown back on yourself. So anyway, writing the book was extremely freeing for me, and I hope people enjoy it, because I enjoyed writing. It was painful to write it, but I enjoyed it. So.
That's absolutely wonderful, Linda. You are a true example that as women, we can reinvent ourselves at any stage in our lives. You call yourself a late bloomer. I would just say you just morph and decide, okay, I'm done with this chapter of my life, I'm going to do something else. And it's beautiful to watch, because a lot of women hold back. They get to 50 and they just start getting ready to die. They're afraid to try anything new. And what you've done is really exquisite. And I really commend you for that. Now, we have stories that we either tell ourselves or stories we've been told about us that we hold on to and we believe. How did you manage to break out of the stories that shaped your life?
I think in great part, a lot of it was that I had lived in this small suburb of St. Louis in Kirkwood, which is a lovely place, but I had lived there since I was my birth in 1950. And then in 1985, which is the book talks about, I left this tiny suburb with my two very, very small children and moved to the East Coast. And I think that being lifted out of that environment where I was consciously or unconsciously bombarded with messages about who I was and what my place in society was, I think that enabled me, that geographic switch, to sort of look around. And I still got the messages of, who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do and what my place was, which, was not a very high ranking in that environment. So I was getting inklings of it when I moved away, and I was cutting the tether, but it wasn't until I went back to close up my parents' home in 2000, so 15 years later, that I really made that final translation, if you will. So yeah, but I think if I had never left Kirkwood, Missouri, it would have been much, much harder. So that helped me, because then once I moved east, I had to go into survival mode. I had two very small children. I was working full time for the first time, and I had to just move ahead. And so I did. And I think that gradually cracked open the idea of who I was. And then it all came to fruition when I went back home in 2000, sorry.
Wow. So sometimes that a physical shift, a change in location is all you need to break the cycle of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you could go back to that younger woman, fearful, moving from a place that would have been a place of comfort where everything and everyone you knew was, and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up to this point, what advice would you give her?
I would tell her not to believe what other people say you are. If they say that you're whatever, fat, stupid, lazy, whatever words they use or imply, I would tell them to listen to your own inner voice. I would tell them not to be afraid. And I would tell them to not be a people pleaser, because, you can please some of the people some of the time, and then you really lose yourself. And I spent a lot of years thinking, oh, if I can just try harder and make this person like me and that person like me and accept me. And so that's what I would say. Oh, and starting younger, I wish I had believed in myself when I was younger. So believe in yourself, I guess.
Hello, Terry. That was another good presentation, a real reminder for women to believe in themselves and believe in their dreams, not to listen to the voices. We are sometimes programmed and run by the stories we tell ourselves mostly, and the stories that have been told to us.
True. I think more women need to take a look at that and become, you asked the question about being optimistic. And yes, I do expect good things. But there's a time when we have to face reality and we have to look at both sides, but we should never use the joy of wanting things to be perfect or wanting things to make us happy and not giving up that and reverse into negativity.
Yes.
That's important.
That is so true.
Yeah, that's important.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, we had another fantastic day. We've met some pretty phenomenal women.
Oh, definitely. Wow.
This has been fun. And
has.
so we will be back again tomorrow, same time, with yet another batch of fascinating guests. We want to thank everybody who's tuned in from all over the world. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And see you on day 3 of the HerStory Online Summit tomorrow. Thanks again, Terry.
Okay,
Bye for now.
Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Bye.